Yes, only time will prove I have lost my way. 'Cause I hear tell about a heaven in Alberta, where they've got all me. I have lost my way, but I hear about a heaven in Alberta, where we've got all me.
Hi, everyone. Frankie here, New West Reset. Hello. Welcome back. Thanks for shooting in, joining me here tonight. Great to see you here. Thank you very much. Where are we at here? Well, it's Friday night. Well, at least it's nighttime here. Well, evening-ish. 7 p.m. Mountain Time here in Calgary, Alberta on Friday, September the 16th. And this is New West Reset Live. This is episode 9 now, I think, already. A guy's at 9 already, so that's pretty good. And this is, well, it's only rock and roll, but I like, wait, it's only rock and roll, but it's Alberta. We're going to be looking at the town of Frank. Now, my name is Frank. I prefer Frankie because it sounds more jovial. Sounds more fun-loving. But anyway, we're going to be looking at the town of Frank here coming up shortly. I've got some video to share with you. I've got some photographs, old photographs to show you. And then I think a guy's going to take you on the old Google Maps, and we'll have a look at the town of Frank in present day. And we'll look at another little interesting town that's just a hop, skip, and a jump further on down the dusty trail from the town of Frank. In fact, like 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes down the road from the town of Frank, another little town called Blairmore. But as the description, as it says in the description box below, it's this town of Frank is here in Alberta. In fact, it's not far from where I am here in southwestern Alberta, southern Alberta. But in May of 1903, in the middle of the night, while folks were getting some well-deserved shut-eye, the entire side of a mountain came crumbling down and buried half the town, killing, what was it? We'll get into it. We'll get into it. But it was something that I learned about in elementary school here, or maybe it was middle school, like junior high school, maybe a grade 5 or 6 or 7, so somewhere in there. But I remember it was part of the curriculum, you know, in terms of learning our local history and whatnot. And I remember thinking, even just as a wee lad, that wow, that must have been thunderous and frightening. And I mean, you know how it is when you're half asleep or you're suddenly woken up in the middle of the night. You're kind of in a stupor. You don't know what the hell's going on, right? So to combine that with, you know, the fact that what woke you up in the night was half of a mountain crumbling down on you, well, you know, can give somebody the jitters, to say the least. So anyway, yeah, welcome. This is, once again, a New West Reset. My name is Frankie. And, well, we've got Old World Michigan here. Says, hi, love the tune. Oh, yes, thank you. That is a local Canadian band by the name of Big Sugar. They are from, I want to say they're from Manitoba. Manitoba, eh? Up here in Canada. And Gordie Johnson, the lead singer, lead singer slash lead guitarist. That's a song called All Hell for a Basement. And that's an acoustic version that he did. Yeah. I used to use the album version. But YouTube was always hitting me with copyright with that. And I'm like, really? Pretty sure Gordie himself wouldn't mind a fellow Canuck using that song for the intro, but it is what it is. So I found another version, and that one seems to be okay, even though it's the same song, same lyrics, same medley. So, just goes to show you that YouTube doesn't make any sense. But it's kind of my theme song on my channel. I like it. And, hey, I hear a tale about a heaven in Alberta where they got all hell for a basement. That's pretty telling. So, yeah, welcome, Old World, Michigan. MJL, Michael, Joshua Lewis in the house. It says 11:06 a.m. Saturday morning there. Wow, where are you? Where are you that you're a day ahead? Well, how many hours is that? That is 16 hours ahead. Are you in Australia? Are you down under? If so, good day. How you going? Welcome. See, down under, they say good day. How you going? Up here in Canada, we say good day. How's it going, eh? It's basically the same. There he is. Maggot is here. Good to see you. Welcome. So, yeah, we're going to look at the town of Frank, Alberta, 1903. Half of a mountain came crashing down and buried half the town. As you would suspect, it was a mining town, I believe coal mine. And I guess as a result of the mining, something happened and this thing gave way. So I think what a guy will do first here is we'll have a looky-loo at just what old Wikipedia has to say about the town of Frank and what all that shenanigans is all about. Scoodly-doo-doo. See if you can see that all right, hopefully. Let's make it a little bigger, a little bigger, a little bigger, a little smaller, a little bigger, a little smaller. There we go. Frank, Alberta. Frank is an urban community in the Rocky Mountains within the municipality of Crow's Nest Pass, southwestern Alberta. These are all Native, Indigenous, First Nations people names or English translations thereof. American Indian, or in this case, Canadian Indian, what we call First Nations here. So 1901, American entrepreneurs, you wacky Americans always coming up here doing wacky stuff. But anyways, American entrepreneurs, Sam Jabo, I don't know, and Henry Frank, he's a businessman and politician, developed the first of many coal mines. Okay, there you go, in the Crow's Nest Pass. The Crow's Nest Pass consists of this town of Frank, as well as the town of Crow's Nest Pass, Blairmore, and I want to say there's another one in there. I think there's 4 in there. Coleman, I think, is the other one. Like the camping stoves. So at the base of Turtle Mountain, which is the half that thing is what ended up collapsing. So they just erected this community of Frank. We'll just put a town here at the base of this mountain and just start mining for coal, I guess. So they put this town in the flatlands located between the Canadian Pacific Railway. That name comes up all over the place here in our historical narrative up in Canada. So between their tracks and the mine was a huge flat area, and they decided, oh, let's build our town right at the bottom of this huge mountain, and then let's do some mining above our town, because that's what smart people do. Oh, in Sydney. Okay, there you go. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, sounds suspicious already, right? Right. So they incorporated it as a village September 3rd, 1901. All right. So they had a big grand opening for the community, yada, yada, yada. The Frank Slide of 1903 destroyed much of the mine's infrastructure, several rural businesses, and 7 houses on the outskirts of Frank, killing 70 to 90 people. Let's read this again. The Frank Slide of 1903 destroyed much of the mine's infrastructure, several rural businesses, and 7 houses on the outskirts of Frank, killing 70 to 90 people. So, one, they're not even sure how many people were killed. 2, there's between 70 and 90 people living in 7 homes. What was that, 10 to 12 people per home? What was going on here? Because they weren't mining at the time and the businesses were closed at the time. Because if not mistaken, this happened at like 1 in the morning or 3 in the morning or something like that. Either way, you're not mining at 3 in the morning, and your business ain't open at 3 in the morning or 1 in the morning for that matter. And by the way, the population of Frank in 1901 was 19 people. Of course, they're not going to give us a date for the population of Frank in 1903, even though the most historically significant occurrence in that town was in 1903. But they're not going to tell us what the population was before or after. They're just going to tell us, roughly 70 to 90 people. Bish bosh. Yeah, it's not important. They only had families and names and lives, and well, that's fine. That's fine. But you can see that in 1906, the population was almost 1,200 people. So after the town was destroyed by this mountain falling on it, the population actually went up, unless there was more than 1,200 prior to the slide, the avalanche, or the rock slide. Because again, they're not giving us a date it's every 5 years here, right? So they're not giving us a date around 1903, 1902. So who knows? The population in 1903 when this happened could have been 3,000 people. It's a mining town, right? So it could have been a bustling little town. But it doesn't sound like it because only 7 houses were destroyed. And in other narratives, they say that's about half the town in terms of buildings, right? So that's very hinky to me that, almost 100 people killed, but it's only 7 houses. But of course, the mine reopened within weeks, and the rail line was soon reestablished through the slide path, and it continued to boom. And then in 05, 06, a new residential subdivision was developed north of the tracks to keep pace with the mine production. A new zinc smelter, a new 3-story hotel close to a cold sulfur spring were also constructed. A small zoo was built near the hotel. Oh, look at that. So in a town of 1,200 people, you got to have a zoo, apparently. And they didn't waste any time digging out the mine. As we'll see, they didn't dig out any of the houses that were buried in this landslide. But they sure as heck got the mine up and going and re-uncovered the railroad tracks. But those people's houses and the people inside, the hell with those buggers. The hell with them, I guess, apparently. However, a period of decline soon followed due to market forces. The zinc smelter never operated. So they opened it and it just never operated. Just throwing money around in the early 1900s. Yeah, money to waste, I guess, even though we're all told that everybody was scratching out a living. And this is out here in the wild frontier, right? In the old Wild West here in Alberta, right? Also, they converted it into an ice skating arena. Well, there you go. So they had a sanatorium, which they converted to a military hospital. Of course, that was torn down. Okay, so there we go. In 1978, the government of Alberta passed the Yada Yada Act to form an amalgamation of the village of Frank, Bellevue, the town of Blairmore, and the town of Coleman. Look at these little towns, by the way. There's a shot of the old mine. That looks cool. Blairmore, which we will be having a look at. Coleman, look at that. So the Frank Slide area, I guess, odd wording. The Frank Slide was designated provincial historic resource in 77. And in 85, provincial government opened a major interpretive center. Because people are coming from thousands and thousands of miles from all over the world, I guess, to come and check out some landslide in southwestern Alberta that happened 120 years ago. Anyway, I mean, it's cool that they got all that, but that, of course, is just so they can push their own narrative. And then here we see a nice little mock-up. Now, this town of Frank, the village of Frank, I've heard both, town of Frank, village of Frank, whatever. But as you can see, aside from a couple of exceptions, it's not really gone much over 200 people ever in its history. In fact, right now it's at 150 people. 2021, so last year, 147 people. So at the height, the apex of its population, potentially 1,200 people. When it was established, 19 people. 19 people built the town, got the mine going, and managed to lobby the bigwigs at Canadian Pacific Railway to bring the railway through here because we got coal up in that there Turtle Mountain. I think there's a little bit of a blurb on Turtle Mountain here too, if I'm not mistaken, because the native indigenous population referred to it as the moving mountain or the walking mountain. Let's see here. There it is, Turtle Mountain. The mountain that moves. Local indigenous peoples of the area, the Blackfoot and the, wow, I've never even heard of these guys. Oh, the Kootenai, also known as the Tuksaks. I'm not even going to try. I'm going to butcher it. I'm sorry. But the Kootenai Indians have oral traditions referring to the peak, the Turtle Mountain there, as the mountain that moves. Really? You don't say. So what came first? The indigenous population calling it the mountain that moves, and then the landslide occurred? Or did the landslide occur, and then they started calling it the mountain that moves? It doesn't say. It doesn't say. It just says in their oral traditions. Well, that could be 100 years old. It could be 1,000 years old. It could be 10,000 years old. Thanks, Wikipedia, for once again giving us the bare bone minimum narrative, which is probably BS anyway. But yeah, so there you go. A little bit of Turtle Mountain / the village of Frank. I think what I'll do next here is yeah, well, and they may very well have done the same up here. There are parts of southern Alberta that were at one point part of the Louisiana territories, the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, where the United States purchased the Louisiana territories from France. And that extended from, obviously, Louisiana all the way up through the American Midwest into portions of southern Alberta here. So, and on maps, it's shown as parts unknown and Louisiana territories. And then, of course, just to the east of the Louisiana territories are the quote-unquote Indian territories, so on. So, yeah, that's, the gold mining, silver mining. Up here, not so much gold, a bit of gold here, but mostly coal, zinc. I mean, who knows, right? Who knows? That's the other thing too, right? Like if those 70 to 90 people in the village of Frank were killed in that rock slide or landslide. And let's just be generous and say there was, 2,000 people in there because the mining was well underway by then, supposedly about 2 years into it by this point, right? From 1901 to 1903, roughly, give or take. So you think that even if we averaged it and said 80 people were killed in a town of 2,000 people, which is just in the middle of nowhere in this sort of mountain valley, well, they all got to be related. Everybody in that village must have known somebody that was killed or buried alive and rescued from this bloody slide, right? It's crazy. So I think, let's see here. I have got a video. I'm going to try to share here with you that I lifted from the interwebs that has, I just got to find it here now. It's got a news report from a local news broadcast, just sort of, where they do these once in a while, they go back and revisit these old stories. This was done in the 90s. And why can I not find it? Because I'm in the wrong folder. Yeah, it's from, this is from 2003. So it would have been the 100-year anniversary of the Frank slide. And this is from CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, which is a federal government funded television station. So I should be able to share this anyways because I'm a taxpayer. So I own this footage. So let's see if this works.
On April 28, 1903, Frank, Alberta was just another small mining town. By the next morning, it had entered the history books. The transformation took just seconds. A massive rock slide crushed the town, burying more than 100 people. A century later, what remains of Frank is still there, nestled in Alberta's Crow's Nest past. It's home to nearly 200 people. They live in the shadow of that tragedy, and with the knowledge it could happen again. Here's Cameron McIntosh with Moving Mountain.
"100 years later, the scar is still fresh. A gap cut in the side of Alberta's Turtle Mountain. 90 tons of limestone scattered at its foot. A reminder of 90 seconds of terror.
So, well, we know at least 70 people died.
Today, the landslide that destroyed most of the town of Frank, Alberta, remains Canada's deadliest natural disaster.
You imagine losing your parents and your 4 brothers. Just you kiss them goodnight and then they're gone.
Monica Field's great-uncle was there. Today, she runs this interpretive center, which focuses on the lessons of the tragedy.
What we're seeing with the slide is a natural disaster, but contributed to by the actions of man.
Natives called it the mountain that moves slowly. In 1903, settlers were calling it Turtle Mountain, a booming coal mine and a geological time bomb. Shafts would shake, coal would fall out of its seams. Then, on April 29, 1903, at 4:03 a.m., the unimaginable happened. The summit collapsed. rock came crashing down. Geologist Robert Stewart.
Turtle Mountain is an unstable structure, that arch. It was perhaps attached to the weather. There was a big freeze thaw, and in fact there had been mining at the bottom, which may have been had a contributing factor aspect to the whole landslide itself.
More than 30 meters deep, more than 3 kilometers across. The size of the landslide is overwhelming. The one thing that still surprises scientists to this very day is that so much rock was able to move so far, so fast. The general consensus: ice-cracked rock beneath the north summit. A chain reaction ensued. Boulders the size of houses and cars poured like a dense fluid down the mountainside, skipping and flowing across the valley, destroying everything.
On April 29th, 1903, without warning, 90 million tons of rock crashed down on the town of Frank.
This is Front Page Challenge from 1957. Survivor Emile Berkwin is recalling her childhood home being hit.
There were 6 of us, and we all got out. They dug us out.
Nothing to see. Everything was, the air was full of dust.
Arthur Graham was 8 years old that morning. In 1984, at the age of 89, he could still remember the scene.
10 minutes later, the dust was still hanging everywhere. We didn't know how it happened.
Over the years, fact was laced with rumor. A baby girl was the only survivor. A vault of gold was buried in the rubble. Neither were true. To this day, the real stories behind the Frank slide aren't widely known. Only descendants of survivors still live to tell them.
Grandfather and 16 other men, including his brother George, were all trapped underneath in the coal mine.
Jerry and Dennis Macon's grandfather dug his way out of the slide. It's one of the few happy stories among the tales of houses smashed, lives destroyed, and entire families wiped out. Of the 70 people killed, only 12 bodies were ever recovered. Survivors were extremely traumatized.
Oh, they never said nothing. Ask them, but they don't tell you anyway.
You had to drag it out of them.
Native legend said Turtle Mountain was bad luck. In 1911, a royal commission deemed Turtle Mountain unsafe. It predicted a second big slide. Geologists still are.
We think that the processes that gave rise to the first slide are certainly in operation. They may give rise to another slide.
On the ground, it's hard to see a mountain move. From space, RadarSat images show Turtle Mountain, marked detachment zone. It moves about 1 centimeter a year. That's a lot. The problem is, no one is consistently keeping track.
And what we need to do is set up a monitoring program that will detect that acceleration of movement.
So we'll have these sensors, motion sensors, called geophones, on the mountain.
Back at the University of Calgary, Robert Stewart is working on an early warning system.
And this shows the vibration.
This summer, the mountain will be wired with sensors. They won't stop a rock slide, but they may help predict when the next one will happen.
If we had a number of these, that would begin to tell us where there was an event or a micro-earthquake inside the mountain. And if we saw a bunch of those, that starts to say that area looks like it's beginning to fault or fracture.
If it does happen, consensus is the East Peak will fall next. That's right above the homes of Dennis and Jerry Macon.
Never think of it.
Not going to bother us. If it falls on me, I won't feel it.
Where are you going to go? Stay home. Lock the door.
Locally, that's been the predominant feeling over the years. Back in 1903, Frank's mine reopened within weeks. The bust came with the diesel train and the fall of the coal market, not the fear of falling rock. But that's not to say some don't keep an eye on the mountain.
I'm watching it every day.
90 seconds of terror is hard to forget amid the broken rock, a testament to the power of nature, a memorial to those that died, and a precursor of what may come. For The National, I'm Cameron McIntosh.
All right, so there you have it. Pretty interesting stuff, I think. I don't know. I mean, you got to take all of this with a grain of salt, right? But the laissez-faire attitude of the people that live in this town is just incredible. you know, oh, if it falls on me on my head in my sleep, there's not much I can do about it. Well, at the time, no, but there's this thing called preventative action. It's very closely tied to a guy's self-preservation. You move the hell out of that town, man. Get away with it. Yeah, they're so afraid that this thing's going to collapse again, or another section of it is going to collapse and it's going to fall in the same area, that they've got all these scientists and geologists with all these fancy beep boop beep boop boop doodads and stuff to monitor the movement of this thing, so that the people can continue to live at the base of this ticking time bomb, if you will, with some kind of self-deluded sense of safety. Didn't they say 90 million tons of rock fell and buried this town within a matter of moments? So obviously you can't outrun that. So you might as well just pack up and move. You know, this one lady, I watch it every day. Why? Why keep yourself awake at night? Get the hell out of there. I don't know. That's what I would do. I mean, sure, you might have, you know, close family ties, roots in that town. Maybe your family that lives there now currently was one of the founding families of this town back in 1901 or whatever, and you feel some sense of stewardship to the area and some kind of roots. But come on, man. This damn mountain's going to fall on your head. Talk about drop a big old rock on their head. Wow. Just ridiculous to a guy like me. But, you know, what are you going to do, I guess? So let's have a looky-loo at the Google Earth here. And we'll have a look at Frank, and kind of give us an idea really of what we're seeing in terms of the geography, what it looks like from, you know, from above, and, you know, what we're kind of dealing with here in terms of this disaster. So let me just get it all set up here. Okay. Right. There we go. So let's gonna share the screen here with this. You can hear a madman sounding cackling in the background. My neighbor's having a barbecue. He's having a good time. Maybe having a couple of wobbly pops and grilling some critter. I don't know. I don't know what he's doing over there, but he's laughing like an escaped mental patient. But anyway, so here we have the township of Frank right here, or the village or the town of Frank right up here. Now this is where it was moved to and resettled, right? After this. So this here is Turtle Mountain. Sorry, I lied. This is Turtle Mountain, way over yonder. This here is Turtle Mountain. So in May of 1903 and I made a mistake. I thought it was 1 in the morning or 3 in the morning. It was actually 4 o'clock in the morning that this thing came crashing down. And they said it killed between 70 and 90, that's 70 or 90 people, and flattened like 5 houses or whatever that was, or 7 houses. Which again doesn't make any sense to me, that how are that many people killed and that little amount of houses are destroyed? Because at 4 in the morning, they weren't doing any mining and none of the businesses in the town would have been open. But anyways, you can see here how this thing just right here, from about here to here, just gave way. And it just rushed across down into the valley here. Here's the Bow River here. So it goes right over the river, not a problem. over the train tracks, and which are right here. They're still there to this day. And then over the, what at the time, this is now a highway, but at the time was just an old dirt road, right? An access road. And all of this here is the debris, including this. This is the debris from this portion. Not the entire mountain, mind you. Just a little bit of this sort of, where are we at here? East by northeast, I guess, face of the mountain. Boom, all of this debris. And I think they said 90 million tons. Now, what I'm finding goofy is this is Turtle Mountain. This is where the slide took place. This is where the old town of Frank was, right here. That's why they've labeled this Frank Slide, okay, because this is where the town was. The interpretive center is way up here. And as mentioned, after the slide, they moved the town. So Frank is now over here. But what's crazy to me is they said that according to the official narrative in Wikipedia and on that news report that we saw, the result of mining caused the instability. And he said there may have been some weather-related issues as well, which, whatever. It could rain or hail or snow as hard as it wants. This is a mountain. What is rain going to do to a mountain? Not much. Yeah, you may have mudslides, you may have some flooding, but rain isn't going to cause a mountain or 1/4 of an entire mountain collapse. So they're saying it's mining. The mining, at least according to the narrative, and I can believe it, the mining caused some instability, and boom, this thing came down. And it was probably already unstable to begin with because of the native indigenous population calling it the mountain that moves. So we've got all of this. Now, they say mining caused this, but this is the mine over here. Well, I mean, this is the trailhead to the mine, but they've labeled this Old Frank Mine. So that's the hiking area. So, like, is the mine here or was it, over here? I'm guessing it was here, but why is this labeled mine? This should be labeled, Frank Mine Trail and then label where the old mine was, because they had to have known the location of the old mine. So this is very convoluted and confusing anyways, I think deliberately. So this is the actual location. And you can go and wander around here, as you can see, right? They've removed some of the debris here, and you can go and hike around in there too. You can pull off the highway, yada, yada. Now, this is a massive, massive debris field. And they said that it buried the outskirts of the town. And the other thing they said was they built the town in the flat area in between the mountain and the tracks, which would be here. Because there's your train tracks here. There's the mountain. So they built the town in here, in this flat area, probably between the tracks close to this river, the Bow River. Oh, sorry, here's the river. This is a road. So this ideally would be where the town would be. So why is this area cleared away where you can hike through and see some of the ruins? So again, the narrative is off, or at least to me. It could be it. It could be it. Sabretooth was fighting Wolverine. It could be it, because, Wolverine's Canadian, eh? Oh, for sure there, bud. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, too, was the population around this time was, 2,000 people. I mean, they don't say in 1903 what the population was. The population in 1901 was 17 people, and the population in 1906 was around 1,200 people. So prior to the Frank slide, prior to this mountain or part of this mountain collapsing and destroying the town and destroying the mine for only a couple of weeks, mind you, then they get the mine reopened and they get the railway reopened. But they didn't, I'm sure they rescued some survivors, but they didn't do anything to remove any of the debris to help to uncover the town again. No, just the train tracks and the mine. F these people, we'll just move the town. Now, to this day, there's only a couple of hundred people in the town of Frank. And again, the new town has been moved here. And what I find really amazing is that in a little town of 200 people, they've got a Masonic hall. Isn't that funny? In fact, you know what? Let's, can you hear that laugh? By the way, I don't know if you can hear it or not, but it's a riot. But let's take our little man and just have a look at our old buddies here, the old Freemasons. Oh, there it is, right there. The Frank Masonic Hall. Looks like a mud flutter, potentially. Now, there's not too many old buildings in Frank itself. You know, there's a couple of beautiful houses like this, but I think these are sort of built, you know, 20s, 30s, maybe just before World War II. So I don't think they're old world, but we will see some in Bellevue. This looks to me like it used to be an old church and they just commandeered it, which of course would make sense. So yeah, there's, you know, even a little town of 200 people in the middle of nowhere. Let's give you an idea of where we are here in Alberta. Okay, there's Calgary, where I live, the largest city in Alberta, the largest city in the prairies, actually, coming up on 2 million people. Really not much around here. You've got the mountain parks area here, a lot of farmland in and around here. You know, some small towns. Got some Indigenous First Nations reserves, Indian reserves, if you will, around. You got Medicine Hat, where all the red brick was made in Alberta. So again, you can see the distance from Calgary to Medicine Hat in the 1800s. Prior to the railroad coming in 1886, or in 1881, sorry, would have been a pain in the ass. But anyway, horse and buggy from Frank to Calgary in 1903, what are you looking at? 300 kilometers away. Can average about 50 kilometers a day in a horse and wagon. It's going to take you a fair bit. So, I mean, it's in the middle of nowhere. You can see it's like these are the Canadian Rocky Mountains here, and then they go down here into Montana. So look how close Frank is to the Rockies. I mean, there's nothing out here but farmland and ranch land until you start getting into the foothills and then into the Rockies. And any of the little towns that are scattered in the Rockies here are going to be little mining towns, little coal mining towns. So it's literally in the middle of nowhere. And to this day, it's still in the middle of nowhere. It's still off the beaten path. It's kind of a pain in the ass to get down there if you want to cruise down there for a road trip to check it out. From Calgary, it's still going to take you about 2 hours, even today. ER is here. Howdy, howdy. Welcome. Good to see you. Good to see you. Thanks for shooting in and joining us here. Get you up to speed. We're looking at the town of Frank in southwestern Alberta that was buried by this Turtle Mountain. Part of it collapsed in 1903 at 4 o'clock in the morning and buried the town. They say the outskirts of the town, but I mean, come on. The town was somewhere around here. You can see where they cleared away some of the debris so people can go hiking and look in here and see some of the remains of the town. So, I mean, this wasn't the outskirts of the town. It was the whole damn town. They've since moved it. And by their narrative, they said they moved the town. Like anybody is fool enough to stay in this area after a mountain collapsed, well, you could just move 5 minutes down the road. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. You know, all of this debris can make it this far, but don't worry, it's not going to make it over here. No, even though that's the same freaking distance. The people in Bellevue got to be thinking, man, we dodged a bullet on that one. Because look how close these towns are. Bellevue's here. Frank is here. Blairmore is here. And then Coleman is here. These towns are boop, 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 boop. That's why the province said, oh, you're all going to be amalgamated into Crow's Nest Pass Township area or whatever. Because like you guys are so close together that there's no sense having separate, aldermen and mayors and county administrators and sheriffs. It'd just be all one. So, I mean, these guys in Bellevue really dodged a bullet with this Frank slide. Otherwise, it could have easily been called the Bellevue slide or the Blairmore slide, for that matter. So I think what I'll do next is share some photos, some old photos that I found in the interwebs. There's not much out there for post-1903 Frank slide photographs, but I mean, there's some out there to be seen. So we'll have a little look-see here, some photos. I tried not to duplicate any of the photos. Some of them might be duplicates just because you may have one that's a little bit of a wider image that hasn't been cropped, or maybe it was better focus or something. But let's just get this opened up here. Have a looky-loo. While I'm getting this set up, just once again, welcome to New West Reset. Hello, my name's Frankie. And speaking of Frank and Frankie, we're looking at the town of Frank here in southern Alberta. Half a mountain buried this town in 1903 at 4 o'clock in the morning in May, killing almost 100 people in this town, of who knows how many, because they don't tell us how many were in the town at the time of the slide. But the town since then averages about 200 people, which is crazy. So let's have a look here. All right. So again, just some cool photos. This is my thumbnail for this video, actually. So I don't think this is Turtle Mountain in the background. I think this is facing the opposite direction. I think from the photographer's viewpoint, Turtle Mountain is behind the photographer. These people are facing Turtle Mountain, I think, because Turtle Mountain was and still is way bigger than this. This is just little foothills. I mean, you can see, trees here. And the mountains like Turtle Mountain up near the tops don't have trees. It's too high up and too rocky. But yeah, you can see just the destruction. Red brick chimney. Where did that red brick come? Well, I guess the railroad was in by this point, so I guess it came from Medicine Hat. So pain in the ass to bring all that brick all the way from Medicine Hat by train, though, for your chimney, when you could have just used some of the local rock. Considering you were mining, you could have built yourself a nice stone chimney and fireplace coming out of the side of your house instead of through the roof. But anyway. Nope, this one I downloaded by accident. This isn't correct. This was labeled Frank Slide, but it's not. This was another slide in Quebec. So I'm just going to delete that. Get on out of there. Go on now, get. So this is Turtle Mountain. You can see it was a huge mountain. It's still a huge mountain. It's not a little rolling foothill that's covered in vegetation. You can see the tree line only goes to a certain point, and then the trees don't grow anymore because it's too rocky and it's too high. So this, as you can see, labeled in the bottom here, Frank, Alberta. You can see where, I don't know what this is. I'm not sure what's going on with this circular. I don't know if that's a stain from them putting something down on the original photo or the negative. I don't know what the circle is, but this Turtle Mountain, you can see we're from here to here, basically, this entire swath, just boom, comes right down and buries the majority of the town. They say it's the outskirts, and I guess, I mean, I don't know, there's some of the town remained, but, I mean, for almost 100 people to get killed in 1903 in just a little mining town in the middle of nowhere, it would have had to have buried the majority of the town. They say outskirts, but I'm not buying it. Again, you can see all this debris here. So your typical little mining town, right, where they just set up these little, wooden homes, just little bungalows. One would think they're just a one story, but I don't know. It looks kind of funny down here. Not sure what's going on here. Did they just dig it out, pour a foundation, build a house on it, and they haven't backfilled it yet? I don't know, because it looks lived in. There's curtains in the windows, and there's stairs going up. Kind of shitty, but I mean, that could be damage from the slide too. I mean, this is post-slide, right? So you can see here how it just came in and just decimated everything. Pretty big building back here. Again, another shot of the actual slide area itself. So you can see there's sort of a plateau along here. And then this just came and just smashed that right down, and just, you can see here where it just gave way and came crumbling down at probably at breakneck speed, probably at close to whatever speed, volcanic eruptions occur, right? So here you go. Here's our propaganda. This is the Industrial Development Board for the province of Alberta. Frank Slide, April 29th, 1903. Disaster struck the town of Frank at 4:10 a.m., April 29th, 1903, when a gigantic wedge of limestone, 2,100 feet high, 3,000 feet wide, and 500 feet thick. How they know that, I don't know. Did they go and measure all of these and then get some guy with an abacus to add it all up? I don't know. But anyway, 500 feet thick, crashed down from Turtle Mountain. 90 million tons. Again, how do they know that? Did they lift a couple of these boulders, weigh them, then count all the boulders and average it? I don't know. But anyways, obviously, it should say an estimated 90 million tons of rock swept over a mile of valley, destroying part of the town, taking 70 lives. Well, we've heard between 70 and 90 lives, and burying an entire 9 and burying an entire mine, plant, and railway in approximately 100 seconds. There you go. The old town was located at the western edge of the slide, where many cellars still are visible. Cellars? Looks like it's C-E-L-L-A-R-S, cellars. So I guess the house was smashed away and just the basement or the foundation remains. I guess that's what they mean, cellars, foundations. So this is Turtle Mountain, and this is pre-collapse. And I believe it was this portion right here that just came up tumbling down. Yeah, there you go. This is a view from Turtle Mountain itself. So the slide would have come from this area down this slope, boom, out this way, and started making its way up the foothills up the other side, because this is obviously a big valley in here, right? Look at that. There's an aerial photo, obviously, taken in 1924. So this is now 21 years after the slide. You can see the town has already been moved and well established over here. Remnants of the town here, and then the rest was buried all under this. Just this whole piece. Smash! Like I said, so much force, supposedly by the narrative, once again, started making its way up the other side, man. Like crazy. So a bit of a before and after. You can see the outline of the peak. Let's just have a scrutinize this a bit. Whoop. Ooh, slow down there, feller. Slow down. Let's see if this has been manipulated. Oh, you can see the little trees poking up here and there, so it doesn't look like it's been manipulated. Well, I don't know. It's pretty. I'm no expert, but anyways, doesn't matter. The point is, you can see this, and now you see it, now you don't. So basically all of this, and then from here to here again, just gave way and gone. You can see this is now where the town, now that it's been moved. So this is where it is in present day as well. So portions of the town of Frank, Alberta that were not buried in the Frank slide, which you can see there in the background. So what you'd expect to see in an old Wild West cowboys and Indians ruckus mining town, coal mining town in the 1900s, you know, horse and buggy and wooden buildings, but you know, you've got all of these funny little techie things. Not these. I mean, those are, you know, your electric lines, which they put above ground here because we have long winters and permafrost and all that. So they tend not to bury the telephone and electric lines. They tend to put them on telephone poles. But that's not telephone pole. It's not a flag pole because there probably would be a flag on it. But, you know, you got your Wild West theme, but the streets are awful wide, which is kind of strange if you've just got horses and buggies. But some kind of funny going on down under here. Not quite sure that's all about. But anyway, moving along. A photo of some of the actual efforts. This is when, this is just hours after the slide occurred, and you've got all the town folk in here searching amongst the rubble, looking for survivors and doing their thing. You can see, you know, smoke still coming out of the houses where, you know, May, even the end of May, around this part of Alberta, this close to the mountains, at night is freaking freezing cold. They would have been hovering around 0 Celsius, 0 to maybe +5 Celsius at best. So, you know, 0 Celsius is the freezing point of water, roughly. So it would have been cold. So they would have had, you know, fire going in the fireplace in their home at night while they slept. 4 in the morning, maybe some of the miners were up getting ready to make their way over to the mine. So maybe cooking themselves a hearty breakfast. I don't know. Another shot here of, again, some of the efforts. You can see some of these are pretty big, and these are just the little ones. I mean, this is one big stone here with a bunch of little stones on it. You can see these are like call it a rock slide. These are boulders. It's not rocks. I mean, they set size of cars and houses. So they ain't shitting. So as you can see, it didn't take long for them to get the old railway back up and running. You got all of this. You've got pretty much the whole town buried, but come on, fellers. We got to get the old choo-choo going so we can get the mine going again. Look at the size of some of these boulders. Huge, like just massive. This seems like it's at an awfully odd angles, very angular, very 90-degree angular for it just being a giant random piece of boulder that fell from a mountain, wouldn't you say? Again, I don't know. I'm just looking at it and going, that seems like a giant block rather than a random shaped boulder. Oh, yep, there you go. Hey, I love old trains too, but I mean, come on, get your priorities right, people. We're going to open this up again. We're going to clear all this debris. How did they get these massive? Like half the town was killed. We saw that other picture. There ain't but like 3 horses left in the damn town. How did they get all this massive debris off of, and not only off the tracks, but then they would have had to have done some repairs to the tracks. 90 million tons of limestone boulders came crumbling down a mountain, flattening homes and businesses, and in some cases burying the town in 30 feet of debris. So, I mean, it's not just going to tippy-toe across the railroad tracks and tickle them as they go by. I mean, this rail would have been all twisted. Everything would have been destroyed and would have had. It's not just push a boulder off and move the train through. You know, crazy. This is pre-landslide as well. Again, just another. It's similar to one of the earlier ones we looked at. You can see here, you know, get your old world wooden buildings, but they've all got these techie things on them. Can we get a better look at this? Oh, slow down there, fella. Nah, I can't really see much more under that. But again, these huge wide streets. Like, why do you need wide streets? Like, were the city planners planning ahead to say, one day there's going to be a city of 100,000 people, and there's going to be 2 lanes of cars going this way and 2 lanes of cars going this way. And we might have buses and stuff coming up and down here. So we better make these roads real wide now. They planned that far ahead, but they didn't plan far enough ahead that we best not mine the mountain beneath which the very town we live in is built. Right? Weird. So this became a major tourist attraction in the 1920s, hence the hotel going up and hot springs going up nearby as well. And, you know, so I guess it became a big thing to do in the 20s, was to come out and stand on a big giant boulder. But that gives you an idea of some of the size of some of these boulders. So this is part of the Exodus, you know, in one of the days after. So again, there you can see the slide in the background, and up to 30 feet deep, part of the town buried here in the background, and just all of these people. So it looks like it turned out that it was a fairly good-sized town. I mean, one could say it's staged, but I don't think, you know, in 1903, I don't think you're going to just be able to gather this many people in the middle of nowhere and say, oh, let's stage a photo. So, I mean, I have no reason to doubt that this is of the time period. These people aren't exactly smiling and, you know, skipping and through. Even this kid isn't skipping, right? They don't look like they're having fun. They don't have anything with them. I mean, these might have been the people that have just gotten out and they have no worldly possessions to speak of, right? So it looks like it was a pretty good sized town. Now we're like, around 200 people, but then during the height of the mining, again, it could have been 1,200, 2,000 maybe. That's a little bit of a sad photo there. This Glenbow Archives, by the way, that's our museum here in Calgary, the big museum, the Glenbow Museum. So again, take this with a grain of salt. Here you can see them working away at chiseling and breaking up some of these larger boulders into more manageable pieces, and they've already got some of it cleared away here. My assumption, I guess, is that they're bringing horses and carts in here and just hauling the debris away, maybe moving some of it off to the side. I mean, they didn't take it far, because we could see from the satellite shot on Google Earth there that, I mean, the whole area is still covered in debris. So there's a nice little before and after. This is taken from a little further away, but it's pretty close. It matches up. That peak there is this little bit right here. So you can see where a town was and now where it is not. Not the last photo. I think that is the last photo. Yep, that's the last photo there. So yeah, what'd you think of that? Pretty wacky stuff. Pretty weird, wacky, wild stuff. Yeah, very barren land. Well, once there is a sort of a transitional type of land that's, I mean, here in Alberta, we go from the flat prairies where all the wheat and barley and oats and canola and corn and all that's grown, right? Very flat. Then you get into the rolling foothills, which is basically where Calgary is, right? Calgary is right at the beginning of the rolling foothills. And then the rolling foothills transition to the big jagged Rocky Mountains. But there's a sort of a space between the rolling foothills and the Rocky Mountains where not much grows in there. Because even the rolling hills are starting to get high enough where it's just not a lot grows because of the elevation. And the soil itself is already starting to get quite rocky with, granite and limestone and all that crap that the Rocky Mountains are made out of. But a little east where the rolling foothills aren't quite as high and they're slightly more, you know what I mean? Like they're not quite as big. Just as they're getting into the flat prairies. I mean, those you can grow anything on those. There's forests there, there's farms, there's agriculture. I mean, that's totally fine. But yeah, there is a certain transition between the higher foothills and the Rockies themselves where not much grows. And that's kind of looks to me like where the original town of Frank, and even today, where the new town of Frank and that whole Crow's Nest Pass area is. It's just kind of in an area where not much grows there. A few trees, and if you got a house there, you can grow grass and stuff. But it's not going to be a big agricultural center. It's a mining town, and that's about it, right? All right, so let's see here. I've got another video to share about Frank. And then just going to make sure this is the right one. Hang on here. That ain't it. This, I think, is the one. Let me just double check. Yeah. All right. Another little video to share of town of Frank. This one's only a couple of minutes. And it's this, I think, was I lifted it from the interwebs. I can't remember. I'll have to, after the fact, I'll go back and edit in the description box and put down all my sources and so on and so forth. But I lifted this from somewhere on the interwebs, here on YouTube somewhere. Hang on here. I did this wrong. Sorry. still kind of sort of new at this thing here. Here we go. This is what we're after. I think this is just a local guy, or maybe it's a PBS station. But anyway, it's just an interesting little 2-minute clip.
You walk through it and yeah, there's no way you couldn't think of the loss of life. You walk through it. But walking through it, it's a moonscape. It seems like you're on a different planet. Turtle Mountain in 1903, April 29th, 4 a.m., the mountain collapsed and is known as the Frank slide because it slid onto the town of Frank. And it was 30 million cubic feet of rock that slid down. It didn't cover the whole town, but a good part of it. What we do is we do geologic hazard monitoring, and part of that includes monitoring Turtle Mountain. We have now transitioned to a new system. It's a ground-based INSAR system, which stands for Interferometric Synthetic Aperture Radar. And what it really is a box that shoots radio waves to the mountain and the face, and it measures change in the face. So every 8 minutes, it goes across a 4-meter track, and as it goes back across this track, every 8 minutes, it's measuring the face, and then it takes that measurement and compares it over time. So if there's any change in those 8 minutes, it's actually mapped throughout the surface of that face. So we've gone from these mechanical equipment that's up on the mountain and that had a lot of challenges to use it because it would get hit by lightning, it would be loaded by snow in the winter, and then it wouldn't work, to now to something that's off the mountain that we can maintain safely, and then we can measure the face in real time.
So yeah, pretty interesting there. Just in the sense that they're spending so much time, effort, energy, money, resources to monitor Turtle Mountain because they're so afraid that what happened in the past could repeat itself. And let's face it, we're all pretty aware of the fact that the past can repeat itself. So they're doing all that rather than just saying, how about we up and move out of here? Let's just get away from Turtle Mountain just a bit. You don't have to go far. You only got to go to Blairmore or Coleman, the next little town 5 minutes down the highway. If it was me, I would just move away from, maybe, I don't know, 50 miles away from Turtle Mountain would be a nice comfort zone for me. But anyway, Inquisitive is here. He was talking about Yukon and Northwest Territories. Are you a Canadian as well? By the way, because I'm a Canadian, eh? So always cool to meet other fellow Canadians here in this community. So yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting that they're we're gonna monitor the hell out of this thing. Why? Just get out of Dodge, man. Get out of there. So what do you say we have a little look-see here at, we'll kind of quickly run through sort of on street level, Frank, although there's not much to see, just giant boulders. We'll do that, but then we'll check out that town of Blairmore, because that's a pretty neat little place. But I figured first off we would just just kind of take a walk at street level through the Frank Slide area. We kind of already looked in the new relocated post 1903, 1904-ish town of Frank. There's really not much to see. I've spent quite a bit of time looking through there, see if I could find any old world stuff. Not much. There's that old, what looks like the old church converted to the Freemasons Lodge, and that's it, really. So, but with that said, I thought maybe I would, just kind of share. We'd take a little walkabout here, take our little man, and just kind of check out on the Crow's Nest Highway here, because it'll give us an idea. You know, that you got some boulders that are about that size. Whoops! Oh, there, easy, feller. But as we get closer to the debris field, you start to see some really massive boulders. And there it is there. I mean, some of these things are huge, man. Huge. Can you imagine getting yourself some shut-eye, 4 a.m? What's that rumbling? You kind of open one eye and maybe look out the window to see, you know, a quarter of this thing coming down at you at subsonic speeds. So here from that top view that we were looking at earlier, this is one of these areas that you could kind of go in and walk through, and I think they've designated this area as an area that you can walk, and there are the remains of some of the structures there that you can kind of walk around. You can see they did a mighty fine job of clearing away the railroad track. A mighty fine job, because good old CP Rail spares no expense. This behemoth and this one. It's the size of that car. So yeah, you can just see, like, for, I don't know, what did they say? A couple of miles, just this debris field. Sorry, this sucker here, man, huge, man. This is all limestone. They say, like, pretty much Turtle Mountain is all limestone. So, like, can't this be used? Can't this be, you know, can't it be repurposed? Can't they just, I don't know, haul this away and, you know, make it into limestone blocks and use it for new construction projects? I mean, surely some of these massive boulders you might have trouble with, but okay, like this stuff here, this stuff won't be missed. It's not like somebody's all of a sudden going to come along and say, "Hey, somebody keeps taking these limestone boulders out of here." They said it was 90 million tons. So, you know, it's, I don't know, it's crazy. Yeah, that's about as exciting as that's going to get. So, so here's Frank. We looked at the Masonic Hall. So let's take a little mud flood walkabout tour here of Blairmore. Just have to bear with me. I can't remember exactly, but there's a bunch of old world buildings in here that, well, I mean, I'm surprised, but I shouldn't be surprised, are just in this little town. And remember, we're, you know, like 2-hour drive from Calgary, out in the middle of the Rocky Mountains here. And there's nothing out here. This whole area was just based on coal mining. Maybe some cattle ranching, but you're not doing any farming out here. So as we pull into the town of Blairmore here, you're starting to see some interesting things here. But now we start seeing some really cool looking stuff here. And this here. A nice old brick building. I mean, they've smeared stucco and schmutz and concrete thin set all over it, but that's fine. We can tell by looking at it. You can sort of picture in our mind's eye its former glory. This place looks like it's had a couple of major facelifts, but I want to say this is an older building too. But not as interesting as these ones down here. These are beautiful. And again, why? Now, they're not massive. Okay, they're not massive buildings. These aren't, don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying, oh, look at these old world buildings just like we'd see in New York or Paris or London or San Francisco. No. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, why do you need these large brick structures for these little towns in the middle of nowhere that have populations of 200 people and have never really exceeded that? Nice detail here with along the top, this brickwork. This, to me, looks like it might be sandstone here. This could be concrete, or what they might have done, and what we see here often in Calgary, is this was sandstone, but it erodes and it starts staining whatever's under it, like you see here. See how it's all staining? The sandstone is very soft and it erodes and it stains the brick. So what they do is they'll shave a few millimeters or like 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch off or whatever, or even so that it's lined up with the same depth as the brick face of the building, and they'll just shave it right down or chisel it or carve it right down so it's smooth. Then they'll prime it and paint it so it doesn't continue to erode anymore. So it looks like they did that on the top, but they didn't do it on the bottom. Like an old theater here. It's pretty cool. But again, 200 people, what do you need a theater for? I mean, it's cool that they have one. If I lived here, I'd be happy that we had a theater, but again, time and time again, we see this. This doesn't matter if you're in some little town in, I don't know, Holland, some little town like we see on streets of Tartaria in like Utah or Nevada or something. Well, this is way the hell out in the middle of butt-fuck nowhere, Alberta. And it keeps going. There's more. And they get bigger. This has been refaced, but I want to say this is an old world building too. In fact, it's got some nice little details along there, but I want to almost say it looks a little stumpy, and it looks like at one point it should have been one floor higher, maybe. You can see here the door on the corner instead of on the front or on the side. I always found that to be interesting, and I always wondered why they did that. This has been really bastardized. That cute little guy there. But even the little small, insignificant, they have nice little detail along the top there. Well, don't go too far. This one's got some arched windows. Look at that. Again, nice brickwork here. Not sure what this is. Looks like something funny going on here. Looks like something was there and was removed, maybe, or they messed around with it somehow, but nice arched windows there. And you can see a couple of different layers of facading or like Victorian tart up that they've done in this, right? Like you can see here, the original red brick. Some of it's poking through here because they painted this whole thing. But then you move down, then you've got this facade stone that it's basically, you can see a chunk's falling off. It basically just glues on, right? Or you put mortar on it and stick it on there. And then they've added all this BS along here, and then this little thing here with the shingles too. So you could see how if you would have to chip away layer after layer after layer to get at what the original gloriousness of this building once was. Like an onion. Just like an onion. This one too, I think, was Old World. It's just hardly even recognizable anymore. Maybe some brick in there, maybe. Hard to say. These windows go in real deep, though, which leads me to believe brick and then some kind of facade, and then they put this crap over top of it. Another little one here, too. Again, just a short, stumpy little guy, very unassuming, but they've taken the time to do this nice detail along here and even along here. Why? For a little town of, a couple hundred people in the middle of nowhere, get this nice, big, huge hotel. Looks like, originally it had maybe a tavern on the main floor and maybe a restaurant or a cafe and then your hotel. Still got something on here, but looks like they've taken the tech off. But again, look at this. Really nice work. Like really, really nice work here. Let's take a little stroll here and see what we can... Yeah, and see they've messed around with some of the original windows. They've blocked in some of it and added smaller one, taken a door and blocked that in completely there. You can see the brickwork here is above what used to be the old window. And then they've put this stupid awning. Like the bottom of this awning should be up here so that you can still see the brickwork. Like that's not how you do that. And they've just filled in doors and windows and everything along here. Let's brick it in. Let's brick it in some more. Let's brick it in. I'll brick it in some more. This, there. See, now you see there's your sandstone. And then you can see here the discoloration. The sandstone. It stains it. You can't get rid of it. Pretty neat looking old hotel for this little town in the middle of nowhere. Established in 1904. Why were people coming out here, this little town in the middle of nowhere of 200 people, that you would need to build that large of a hotel, by the way? How many rooms you figures in there? 1, 2, 3, 4, say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I don't even know. I don't even want to guess. A couple of, let's say 24 rooms. Hell, that's 10, 15% of the town right there. I have a feeling a lot of these are old world and they've just really messed around with the facade. This one, I'm pretty sure. This one most probably as well. This one still has some elements of the old world here. It's nice to see. But, it's just, covered in schmutz and crap. This one's a beauty. Somebody loves this place. Really looked after it. Again, that entrance in the corner, pretty neat looking old light fixture there as well. Oh, they've decided to put a flag on that one. There you go. Well, then that's what it has to be then. It just has to be a flagpole if there's a flag on it. Pretty fancy lights for a little town, just got to say. Hell, there's parts of big city of Calgary where I live that don't even have that fancy of lights. Again, I think that's another one. And there's more. It's a little town. Look at this lovely. Beautiful. Again, really well looked after. But, at least 2 floors, a big, big building. I think this is the old school. It looks like it was built in the 50s, maybe 60s. This, I think, is the old post office. That looks pretty old. It's probably cover. Oh, that's the TELUS. Okay, that's the old phone, the old telephone building. It would have been the switch house for the switch operators when you're making calls and so on and so forth. That's where that would have been. Of course, now they just put a cell tower. There you go. But yeah, that's really nice looking. Almost looks like a train station or something. Hey, Biggs. How are you? Good to see you, my friend. Welcome. Kim Ray's here. Hello, hello. Howdy, howdy. Good to see you. Oh, Inquisitive says he's French Canadian. Oh, bonjour, monsieur. Moi aussi. Ouais, un demi francophone. I think we're getting the tail end of this little town of a couple hundred people in the middle of nowhere in Crow's Nest Pass, southwestern Alberta, a little mining town. This one here, I don't know. No, I don't think so. I think that's probably slightly more modern. Look at this beaut. Another hotel and tavern. You need 2 hotels in this little town. Again, you got to go up some steps to get into the Green Hill Hotel. And what's that down there? See that? Right above my thing? That plaque. You're not going to be able to get in tight enough on that plaque, unfortunately. That definitely looks older. That's a nice one too. But again, why do you have to go up? Why not just put the door here? Because you're in the middle of the goddamn Rocky Mountains, and you know this little town's going to get about 3 to 4 feet of snow. So some would argue, well, they do that so you're not tracking snow in. Well, yeah, but then every step and stair that you take is going to be covered in ice and snow, and it's a pain in the ass to shovel ice and snow off of a smooth, flat surface like a sidewalk. Never mind off all of these here stairs. Carry your bag of groceries, fall and break your damn head. Another nice one there, nice one there. I think this one's older too. Again, they just mess it up with this ugly crap, but you know, there's some nice little details there that remain. Look at this thing. Let's have a look at this. What's going on with this thing? Huge. Little mining town. Got to have these big arched doorways. You got to have this pergola coming out of here. You got to have, you got to have portals. More arch windows. Gonna throw some tech on there. Let's take a look at the side of this thing. I thought maybe we'd see arch windows, but no such luck, Chuck. Now, aside from going up and down all the streets and finding the odd castle-like, well, not castle-like, but mansion-like home in here, I think we've pretty much reached the end of this pretty startling little town of just a couple hundred people. I'm just going to take one quick little cruise on down the avenue here to make sure. Yeah, now we're getting pretty residential here. Not much. Oh, let's get some chicken. Go and see the Colonel. Get some chicken. Yeah, now we're getting into sort of, well, what's this? Looks like it might be an old gas station. Garage sale store. Yeah, see, that used to be an old garage gas station. And they've just covered it all up in wooden siding. And then again, you got to go up some stairs to get into this place. The guy wants to just grab onto this that's peeling off and just give it a yank and see what's under there. But yeah, it looks like we've reached the tail end of that little tour there of this little mountain community of Blairmore in the Crow's Nest Pass in southwestern Alberta that was missed by the Frank slide, amazingly enough. So there you go. I think that is it for the town of Frank and the Frank slide. And I don't know. Like I said, when I was a kid in school, we learned about it. I can't remember if it was primary school or middle school, like, elementary school or junior high, whatever you want to call it. Never went there on a field trip through school, but did go there on a road trip. I think I was in my early to mid 20s, I want to say, maybe. And I remember then, and I wasn't awake then. I was still kind of a babbling knucklehead, right? And I remember going and being really, really impressed and just thinking to myself, how could this have happened? Like, how on earth could this have happened? Because if you don't mind, sir, I'm going to add you as a mod here. Just going to add the guy's going to pile the weight of the world on your shoulders because you don't have enough on your plate already, Beeks. Oh, Maggots, what's Maggot saying here? Lots of these little towns get grants from the government. They gave my town 60 million royalties for regions, and the councillors took most of it. Well, yeah, of course. The politicians are they're gonna take that. They're gonna want to wet their beak. Dirty, rotten scoundrels. By the way, what do you think of my background here tonight? I got some assorted old junk. That I like collecting old junk. Got me an old Kodak Brownie from 1940. I want to say 47, 48, post WW2. Got some field glasses there. Those are actually from a yachting club. I've got an old Edison Victrola record, one of those shellac platters, and a couple of old books from the early 1900s. I try to put different stuff in the background here every time because, a guy is bashful and isn't going to necessarily show his face, at least not right out of the gates for the first little while here on this channel. But at the same time, I don't want to just have, this kind of thing going because it's not the most exciting. So I figured, sometimes I have a bunch of cameras. Sometimes I have all kinds of old books, all kinds of stuff, old photographs. Oh, what's the record? It's what does it say? Last Blossom of Summer. It's a foxtrot. So, yeah. So once again, I want to welcome you to New West Reset. Once again, my name is Frankie. Hello. Thanks for shooting in and joining me here tonight. Been going for just over an hour and a half. Don't really have much more to share in terms of the town of Frank and that Frank slide. But certainly we'll hang around for just a little while longer here. If any of you fine folks in the chat have any questions, anything like that, feel free to let me know in the chat. I'm going to start doing let's see, how do I want to word this here? Well, there's a couple of things that are going to be coming up on the channel here. I'm trying to arrange a meetup with a couple of local cats that live here, right here in Calgary. There's a couple of guys that I've been talking to online, just messaging back and forth, that live here in the city that'd be interested in doing a meetup and maybe a small little mud flood walkabout in a older neighborhood, a smaller neighborhood, so we're not out all the live long day. People got stuff to do. But probably, I don't know, grab a coffee, have a quick howdy, get to know you chit chat, do a nice little walkabout, and then maybe finish it off with a bite to eat and another little chit chat before we, all part and go our separate ways. So I'm trying to get that done within the next couple of weeks. The other thing I want to start doing is a different kind of live stream. I'm going to continue to do these, what I call my mid-month, once a month live streams, where I just look at something. Generally has something to do with Alberta, if not Calgary specifically, then at least Alberta. Barring that, I'll branch out and try to keep it Canadian content for these streams, just whatever the topic is. I've talked about Montreal. I've talked about the Calgary Stampede, the world's largest rodeo, and all that stuff. And sometimes I'll cover off topics on these mid-month live streams that are kind of more personal. Like I did the Montreal thing because I was actually born originally in Montreal and grew up in the South Shore of the St. Lawrence, just outside of Montreal. As a kid, I lived there till I was 10 before we moved here to Calgary, Alberta. So I've lived here 42 years, but my first 10 years of my life was in Montreal. That's why I did that live stream last month for about Montreal. I think the month before that was July, and I think that's when I did the Stampede, I think, because Stampede is in July. I think. I can't remember. But anyways, I'll continue to do these, but I also want to start kind of doing a sort of, I don't know, just kind of a chill chat type of stream, because again, I've gotten to know a lot of really great folks here in this community online, and a lot of them live fairly close, but not close enough where they could just, we could do a meetup. So I thought initially of doing kind of just a little conversations, a little chit chats with local people, but then I thought, well, that's too limiting. Part of the reason why I started this channel, because I wanted to share what I was seeing in Calgary and encourage other people to go out wherever you live all over this realm, any of the four corners of the world, and check out your area. So I thought this other type of stream I want to do instead, or in addition to these mid-months, is just a chill stream or just invite somebody on who's in the community who wants to talk about stuff. Like maybe they have some photos from their neighborhood or the city that they live in that they want to share. So that's the type of stream that I'll be wanting to do. So I'm going to try to do 2 streams a month going forward. Again, my mid-month, and then sort of a chill chat. Just call it that, a chill chat with Frankie stream. I don't know. Anyway. So, yeah, if you're interested in jumping onto any of those, just stay tuned here. I'll keep you posted here on the channel. And yeah, if you're interested in jumping, if you're not too shy or bashful of a person and you want to come on, you can do like me too. You don't have to show your face. If you've got a decent microphone on your tablet, desktop, or even your phone. I think StreamYard works for phone and everything too. But if not, we could always do Zoom, however you want to do it. It's new, still going to be working out the kinks, but I definitely think it's fun to do. And this is something that, well, yeah, exactly, Biggs. And this is something that was kind of something that Biggs and I were talking about when he was kind enough to have me on his show a couple of weeks back, was, trying to do more of these things where we do a lot more interactions, do a lot more talking, have conversations, have dialogue. If it turns into debate, then we could have debate too. Why not? Nobody says that debate has to be a bunch of mudslinging, although in the mud flood community, we might just do some of the mudslinging, but maybe in a good way. So yeah, that's going to be coming up on the horizon. Got a couple questions here in the chat. Kim Ray says, I lived in Montreal also until I was 11. Really? And Kim Ray is one of them fine folks that lives not too far away from where I live. Not right here in the city of Calgary, but very close. So yeah, there's a lot of locals that come by and visit yours truly. So that's great. I really appreciate that. Start a Discord. I'm friends with some fellas that have YouTube channels, and they have a Discord. And even just, I just got to tell you, I'm not the most technologically savvy guy for me. I mean, this StreamYard thing, and even YouTube itself is pretty user-friendly. And that's my speed. Very user-friendly. And I had a hard time navigating Discord. Never mind starting my own. Wow. I mean, it's an idea, and maybe as I get further along and get a little bit more confident with, beep, boop, bop, boop, boop, computer technology, then maybe that's something I can visit later on. Inquisitive is inquiring. Surely Calgary has an underground city center like My Montreal, no? Mais bien sûr, monsieur. Bien sûr. Yes, indeed. Portions of downtown Calgary have an underground. There is a tunnel system that goes from the Palliser Hotel, which to me is an old world hotel. Supposedly it's a Canadian Pacific hotel, right? Like the Banff Springs and the Chateau Frontenac in Quebec City, and all of these castle-like, amazing, majestic hotels that hold like 2,000 people that are built out in the middle of nowhere, red brick and sandstone and limestone built in supposedly in 1870 out in the middle of the Rocky Mountains, just for the people riding the train to stay as guests. But the Palliser Hotel, supposedly there's a tunnel going from that to the old Calgary Herald building, because in the basement of the old Calgary, was it the Calgary Herald building or the Grain Exchange building? One of the two. They might even be one and the same. I don't know. The narratives are confusing. But anyway, it's supposed to be a tunnel going from the Palliser Hotel to the old Calgary Herald or Grain Exchange building, because in the basement was a speakeasy. Now, we didn't have prohibition here in the 30s. We did have a temperance movement in the late teens, early 20s, but it didn't really take. But for some reason, we still had speakeasies? I don't know. But anyway, that's the narrative. I've never been down on those tunnels, but I used to work in an office building downtown, and I got to talking to one of the maintenance guys in that building, and I was actually asking him if some of the basements and sub-basements and lower parking levels, like down, like 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 floors down in these high rises, connect to some of the train stations and stuff like that. And he was the one that said, well, no, but there are some tunnels from way back in the day, like the Palliser Hotel tunnel and all of that. So, yeah, I'm sure there's many, many more. Kimmery is saying the old General Hospital in Calgary had many levels underground. Yeah. Now, you talk about the one that was in Bridgeland, right? The latest iteration of the General Hospital that was torn down. And now they've built a medical center in place. That never made sense to me either. It pisses me off, man. Rant time. Brace yourself. Rant time. Frankie's got a rant. The old Calgary General Hospital that was in Bridgeland, which I think is the one Kim Ray is referring to. She says yes. Yeah. It was a beautiful red brick and sandstone hospital. Huge building, but looked very old worldish. What happened? Oh, the usual. There's asbestos. Oh, there's lead paint. So we got to just knock the whole thing down. And then what do? They build another medical center right where that old hospital was that had been there since the 20s or whatever. Like, are you kidding me? Why do they always do that? They tear down an old school and then they build a new school. I mean, it's bad enough when they tear down a beautiful old building and they just put it in a parking lot. This, at least they built another medical center, but why tear down a hospital to build a hospital? They say, well, it was cheaper to tear it down and demolish it completely and build a new one than to bring the old one back up to code because, asbestos and lead paint. I don't buy that. I don't think it's more expensive to remove some asbestos and lead paint and then maybe just make sure that everything is structurally sound and give it a nice coat of paint on the inside and maybe, update some of the, the electrical work. I don't think that's more expensive than tearing it down and rebuilding. Because when they tear it down, they still got to pull out all the asbestos and lead paint first. They can't just go in there with wrecking balls swinging and have all that dust go into the air and people that live in the neighborhood are breathing all that shit in. So I think that's a crock of shit. But the first Calgary General Hospital was a wooden 3-story building that was in what's now kind of known as sort of in and around the Eau Claire area. And then that one became outdated and was too small. So then they built the sandstone one in what is now near the Stampede grounds. It's called the Rundle Ruins. And then they demolished that, but kept some of it up for some reason. That's now become a tourist attraction thing with a plaque. And then they built the general hospital that Kimray was talking about in Bridgeland, and then they tore that one down and built a new one in its place. So the medical center at the old general hospital is actually the fourth version of a general hospital now. Ridiculous. Maggie says, I worked for an Italian bricklayer when I was young. He used to tell me to put hardly any cement in the mix. Too much cement makes it rigid. A little bit of cement allows the bricks to move. Yeah, in the mortar or in the concrete, if you add too much of, and people always confuse cement and concrete, or that they're one and the same or whatever, and it's not. Cement is an ingredient that you add into concrete or into mortar in some cases, depending on the mortar, right? There's a certain number of ingredients. You got water, you got lime, you've got sand, you've got cement. Sometimes you have other binding agents and so on and so forth. But yeah, too much cement makes it too rigid, and then the bricks aren't able to sort of slightly flex, the joint. You have your mortar in between. You want a little bit, and this is an exaggeration, just these like slight millimeters. I'm moving my hands, but if you have one brick and another brick, you want them to be able to kind of flex a bit certain ways, especially, again, Canada, as you would expect, it gets cold, right? And when water freezes, it expands, and then when it that ice melts, it contracts. We get a lot of expansion, contraction, all that kind of stuff. And then it starts to crack. And then once it cracks, you get water that gets in there, and then it just starts crumbling and eroding. And before you know it, it's done. It's completely done. Just had a comment here. Where is it now? I lost it. There was a comment. I had to approve the comment. Somebody was asking me if I know the, do you know the expression built like a brick shithouse? Yes, I do. Oh, the Commodores did that song Brick House, right? She's a brick house. Yeah, she's mighty, letting it all hang out. Or she's a brick house. So, see, now I'm getting carried away now. Get me all carried away on the Commodores. But yeah, built like a brick shithouse, man. Solid. That's what that means, solid. Because if you're building your shithouse, your outhouse, and you're building it out of wood frame, wood planks, maybe a tin roof, that's fine. That'll do you. That'll do you just fine for about 50 years. And you might have to knock it down and build up another one. But if you build your shithouse or your outhouse out of brick, that brick shithouse might outlast your house. I think there used to be a house here, Bill. How do you know that, Dave? Because there's a big brick shithouse in behind yonder there. Sturdy, well-constructed brick shithouse. Because if you're going to take the time to build your shithouse out of brick, you're a serious feller that likes serious stuff that's going to last, I reckon. Yeah, that was open mic. There he is. I don't know why that. See, I can highlight comments on the StreamYard tab that I have opened. But your comment isn't showing up on the StreamYard, but I see it on the YouTube. But it was asking me if I wanted to allow it or not, because you used some foul language, apparently. Shit. So, yeah, sorry about that. I don't know why. I guess YouTube considers shit a bad word. Yeah, sure. Maggot says, we call them outdoor toilets thunder boxes. I like that. Hey, I'm going to hit the thunder box. I'll be right back. come out of there and you're like, woo, don't go in there for about 25 to 35 minutes. Thunderbox. Oh, man. That's good. That's good. I like that. Thunderbox. Tinkle Tower. Tinkle Tower. Sure, there you go. See, what you want to do, like if you're going to just build any old wooden shit house, all you need is that half moon carved in the door. For some reason, that's the thing to allow air to get through, right? So you don't stink up the place too bad. Because everybody knows he who smelt it dealt it. But anyway, but if you're building a brick shit house, what you're going to want to do is also build a brick wind catcher on the top of that to allow a nice exchange of air flow through that sucker, right? Because you're not going to be cutting a half moon shape out of the door of a brick shit house. That's going to look like shit. So build yourself a nice brick wind catcher with some nice louvers in there, maybe a copper dome on top. Beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, I've been told that this is a 666 symbol. See, I'm a child of the 70s. When I was a kid, this meant A-OK, man. So I guess now we got to do this. Right on, man. Like the Fonzie. Anyway, Poop House. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The Poop House. You guys are nuts. You're all half nuts. And I dig that about you, man. Yeah, Biggs, that's the one. Somebody told me that's the 666 symbol. And I was like, whoops. But again, when I was a kid, that meant like A-OK. So I don't know. JJ's here. Howdy, JJ. Good to see you. So if you're just shooting in, I want to thank you for doing said shooting in. Thank you very much. My name's Frankie. This is New West Reset. And speaking of Frankie, I was talking about the town of Frank earlier. It's a town here in southwestern Alberta, maybe 2-hour drive south by southwest of where I am, in an area called Crow's Nest Pass there in the Rockies. And in 1903 at 4:10 a.m., 90 million tons of limestone from about 1/4 of a mountain gave way and crumbled down in, they said, about 100 seconds. And in some cases, buried this town in under 30 feet of car and house-sized boulders. And it's a big mystery as to how this happened, even though they built their town at the base of this mountain and were doing coal mining above their town. And they went, I don't know, too far, too deep, too haphazardly into the mountain all over the place and made it unstable, and it crumbled down on their town. There's still people that live in this dumbass town. There's still wonder if parts of it are going to crumble down on the remainder of this town of Frank. So much so that they got scientists with all kinds of special equipment up there on the mountain to monitor the movement of the mountain, monitor any vibrations or anything like that, rather than the 200 or so people left in this dumbass town just getting the hell out of there and moving 30, 20, 30, 40 miles away. Bunch of knuckleheads. Big says I'm only 3.1415926539% nuts. That's pie, if you didn't know. So Biggs is what he's saying is he's a nut pie. Pecan, I'm guessing. Or as they perhaps say down in Biggs' neck of the woods, pecan pie. No, I think they say pecan pie. But anyways, that's just the highfalutin folks that say pecan pie. But I love pecan pie. Pecan pie. JJ says, what are those coconuts? I don't know what those are. Coconuts? Your coconuts over there. Oh, well, yeah, down in Florida. They have coconuts down in Florida? I don't know. I'm a sheltered Canadian. Hey, there she is. Ann Pearson is here. Oh, she's giving me some bummer news, man. That's some bummer news. It says did not get a notification, and I have the bell turned on. How dare they? The nerve! I found you live when decided to check out my homepage. Shame on those poop heads. Yes, very much so. Shame. Shame on those poop heads. I agree. Well, it's great to see you, Ann. Thanks for shooting in. Always good to see you. Thank you very much. That's kind of bad news, though. I'm not real surprised that you didn't get a notification. I don't get the notifications either. I don't get the notifications for Autodidactic when he goes live. It's about 50-50 when Biggs goes live. I don't get notifications when UAP goes live. I don't get them when Martin goes live on his 87 channels. I get the notifications when there's a video upload. So, for example, when John Levi uploads a video, boop, I get a notification on the little bell up at the top of my channel, right in the top right-hand corner. I get a notification if somebody leaves me a comment or replies to one of my comments. But yeah, with the going live thing, I don't know. I think the HooTubes doesn't like our community getting together in real time, live, in a group with a side chat like this and commiserating and sharing ideas and like-minded people getting together. They don't like that. They want to put us all in little boxes. And Pearson, I'll put you over here in this little box. Kim Ray, I'll put you up over here in this little box. Biggs, I'll put you over here in this box. JJ down over here, right? Everybody gets their own little box, right? Open mic will be up over here. Maggot will be over there. Everybody gets their own box. Right now, all the people in these boxes will give you ideology A, and all the people in these boxes over here will give you ideology B. Then we'll pitch you against each other and fight. That's how they love to do it. The old divide and conquer. Time-tested and true classic. Why do they keep doing it? Because it works. It works 60% of the time. It works every time. It doesn't work with us, though. We understand the whole divide and conquer thing. We police ourselves and we call out the knuckleheads and the weirdos, sure. But I'm just a little guy. And at one point I had 15 people watching me here, which is pretty darn good for Friday night when I'm sure people have other things they'd rather be doing than watching my wiggly fingers on a live stream, talking about some town that was buried in 1903 in some place they ain't never heard of. Where the hell's Alberta? Right? But it's the fact that we can get together. And, I mean, everybody in the chat, they don't have to be talking about what I'm talking about. It's just an opportunity for everybody to get together. That's what Biggs was talking about. And that's why I wanted to get going with this other type of stream. So that people like Ann or Kim Ray or Maggot or Biggs or Open Mic or whoever, anybody can share the link and you can jump in the chat if you want to discuss whatever. You want to discuss the state of the world. You want to call out great channels and give them a shout out. You want to call out knuckleheads in the community and give them a whatever it is you want to do. You got pictures or video you want to share, but you don't want to start your own channel. That's what I want to do. And it's basically just an opportunity for us to, once again, just Avengers assemble, get together as a nice group, commiserate, share ideas, have a good time, have a few laughs, look at some serious shit, but have fun doing it. Right? So, like it says, I was watching cartoons with my grandson. And they were in the Grand Canyon and said, here's evidence of a mud flood. They're onto us. Really? Huh. Yeah. See, that's the thing. Now, why they give us the option to do a live stream and to, have a thing, click notify me. And then, on somebody's page, you can click subscribe and click a bell. And then even customize with the bell, right? You can have receive certain notifications certain ways and not, right? Why do all that if the dang thing ain't going to work? Well, I don't know. If you're subscribed to Kittens Love to Purr channel, right? Where they just show nothing but kittens and kitty cats, which are great. I got nothing wrong with cats, right? They're cute and fluffy and all that. But if that was your channel and you were going live, you damn well bet every single one of your billions of subscribers for a cat channel would get that notification. But because you might have Reset, Mud Flood, Tartaria, any of that stuff as a hashtag in your video or in your live stream or in the title of your video or live stream, then it's just like, they give you the old slap on the wrist, right? Absolutely, Ann. Absolutely. Ann Pearson says they like to F with us. They sure enough do. They sure enough do. And it seems like it's like that with anything that goes against the grain, right? Anything that, if you're just coasting along in a rubber dinghy, going with the flow, going with the current, going along with everybody else, just lazing on down the lazy river, they're fine with it. They're fine with it. But if you go against the narrative, go against the grain, or even let me correct myself. You don't even have to go against the narrative. All you have to do is ask questions. And speaking of Ann Pearson knows better than a lot of us about just asking innocent, simple questions. Oh, I'm curious about this. Well, how does this work? Or what do you mean by that? Oh, I was just wanted to ask a question about such and such. Oh, shut down. Now, in Ann's case, it was a channel that was doing a live stream that she was asking questions in the chat, but it's the same concept, right? So if you're doing a live stream or you're uploading a video, you've got a channel, you're creating content, and it goes against the narrative or even just questions the narrative. Nope, they don't like it. They don't like it. And I know I'm preaching to the choir on this. You all know this, but it shouldn't have to be said, but I say it anyways as a reminder because it's frustrating. It's really frustrating. Yeah, they swatted her nose, kind of. Yeah, right. Treated her like an animal. Swatted her nose with a rolled up newspaper. Right? Make you wear a dunce cap and make you sit in the corner, Anne? Is that what they did? Then that's ridiculous, right? And again, you can agree, you can have disagreements, we can have debate with people, you can have, healthy discussions and debates. Sure, I don't. There's a few channels on here that I love. Okay, I love John Levi. Okay, great channel. Okay, love Streets of Tartaria, great channel. UAP, great. Biggs, Stuffed Beagle, great. There's a lot of channels on here that I really love and I subscribe to. Now, do I agree with everything John Levi says? No. In fact, I subscribe to channels where I hardly agree with anything that they say just because I want to know what's going on over on that side of the fence. What are those fellers doing down over there? Right? So that's kind of the idea, is keep going with these themed, I'll pick some kind of topic mid-month, probably on a Friday night like this, and do my once a month, mid-month live stream. And then now I'm going to try to start a second. Who knows? It might go further than once a month. But I think for now, you got to walk before you can run. I think for now, I'll start off with also a once in a month, just sort of a chill chat and sort of take it from there. So just over the 2-hour mark here now. We're just past 9 p.m. local time here. That's Mountain Time here in Calgary, Alberta. Up in Canada, eh? And once again, my name is Frankie. This is New West Reset. I want to thank all of you for shooting in and joining me here tonight for this live stream. Really, really appreciate all the support. I want to thank Biggs, Ann Pearson, helping to keep an eye on things for us here tonight in the chat. Like, again, I'm a little guy, right? So we don't get much in terms of trolling and jackassery and tomfoolery going on around here, but it's good to have mods anyways because they can share links and all that kind of stuff too. So we got here Ben Stembridge, a new name to me. Howdy, Ben. Hi, welcome. He says, is old Philip Drazinian in the gulag over there in Ruskland? I remember he did some mud flood vids during the Ukraine mess. Not familiar with that feller's name, to be honest. So don't know, Ben. I'm sorry. I don't have an answer. But if he was taking video of content that, again, questions the narrative or goes against the grain, especially in that area, in these times that we live in, specifically right now with Ruski land and, those ukes. Got to talk in code, unfortunately, but you know what I'm saying. Then who knows? He may have been put in a gulag, or at least shut down, or flagged, or punished in some way, either from the Hutus or from the powers who should not be that are over there right now, anyways. I'm 2 hours behind you? Oh, yeah, I guess that's right, because you're on Eastern time. Yeah, you're on Eastern time. So, yeah, it would be 11:13 p.m. over there in Florida. Beautiful Florida, which I haven't been yet. I'd love to go there, though. I think it'd be awesome. Although parts of Florida remind me of Australia, where everything's trying to freaking kill you. I mean, Florida's got all kinds. First, they got gators, but then they got big snakes that are trying to kill you and big bugs that are trying to kill you, just like Australia. But then they also got like a skunk ape or something. I don't know. I don't think it's true, but got all this crazy stuff going on there in Florida. So feller's a little apprehensive, scared. That's a fancy way of saying a guy's scared. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, Beaks. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please share. Oh, yeah, he shared already. Look at Beaks is on the ball. I'm going to call him on the ball Beaks. Well, see, beagles are good hunting dogs, see? So they can sniff out stuff real quick. So there's a link there. And is that the same link? Is it a different link? I don't know. But there's some links. So, yeah, there you go. That one and that one, which I think is the same link. But anyway, very good. Very good. Thanks, Beaks. Yeah, that was Old World Michigan saying, I saw you on Autodidactic today, Biggs. Great stuff. Yeah, that was a good show. That was a really good show. Biggs, the show that you did with Art of Dino was great too. Very, very good. JJ with the what are those? Dinosaurs? Dinosaur emoji. You got all kinds of crazy emojis there. We got bugs and gators and lizards and snakes and spiders and all them things in God's creation that sometimes will give you the creepy crawlies. Yeah. I like Autodidactic's channel because he does, mud flood, and he looks into, at least for me, I can't speak for everybody. For me, I use an umbrella term, Tartaria, right? Like Old World, really, to me, is a little bit more accurate, but whatever. But he looks into a lot of that stuff too. But then he's got that crazy Bernie on there, who's also a fellow Calgarian, lives here in Calgary, not too far away from where I live, actually, maybe 20-minute walk from where I live. But anyways, Burn Eye, the science guy without the bow tie there. He does some crazy stuff too. So yeah, it's, he has all kinds of guests there. That's one of the things I like the most about Campbell's channel over there, Autodidactic, is he's got a lot of guests. they cover all kinds of stuff. So that's pretty cool. And I think the larger a channel gets, the more sort of reach that they have and a larger audience they have that maybe has a lot more of a wider range of interests. So his sort of the spectrum of guests that he can have on there is really, really, really huge, right? So I think that's pretty cool. And St. Florida has Sasquatch too, so be aware. Yeah, do you call him Sasquatch down in the U.S.? I was always under the impression that in the States he's called Bigfoot. And up here in Canada, we call him Sasquatch, which is a native Indian word. But, I mean, borders are just arbitrary lines drawn in the sand by the powers who should not be many, many moons ago, right? So who's to say that Canadian and American Indigenous peoples, I mean, a lot of these tribes or nations were one and the same. The Cree, the Sioux, the Lakota, the Ojibwa, the Blood, all them cats. It's like all the same. The Great Lakes Native Indigenous peoples were the same in Canada and the U.S. The Great Plains natives, or what we call the prairies here in Canada, it's all the same nations and tribes. So, if let's say Sasquatch is a Lakota word, then all of the Lakota tribes and nations would have used that word, whether they were in Canada or the U.S., I guess. I think Bigfoot was more of that term that was coined in the 50s with that, what's his name? The guy who took the Bigfoot footage there, the shaky footage with the guy in the gorilla suit up in the California or wherever that was. What was that cat's name? You know what I'm talking about. I think that's where the name Bigfoot maybe sort of came out of that whole deal, but I'm not too sure. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about the Bigfoot. I mean, some of the stuff's ridiculous. Like he's a shape-shifting interdimensional being that can appear and disappear, and he's associated with UFOs. Get the hell out of my face with that shit. But is there possibility that perhaps in the recent past, through the Native Indigenous people's stories of a Sasquatch, that at one time there was a large great ape on the North American continent? Maybe. Almost every other continent in the four corners of the earth has a great ape. South America has a great ape. Africa has a great ape. Europe at one time had a great ape, but it's extinct. Asia has great apes. And by great apes, orangutans, gorillas, chimpanzees. So who's to say that at one point, I don't know, maybe during the last, prior to the last ice age, maybe there was some kind of large great ape here in sort of North America, in Canada and the U.S., right? I mean, we had giant sloths, we had giant cave bears, we had giant beavers. So, maybe the tales told by the Indigenous First Nations people, the American Indians in Canada and the U.S. that go back thousands of years, maybe they're making reference to an ape, not a hairy man. Some kind of hairy Bigfoot type hominid. I don't know. All I know is they will put Sasquatch on their totem poles alongside with animals that we know are real, like bears and eagles and beavers and wolves and stuff. They make reference to Sasquatch in sort of the same context that they do other living, real wild animals like moose and fish and whatever, right? So I don't know. I'm on the fence, because do I think there's some kind of 7 foot tall, hairy prehistoric man type thing that's just traipsing around the woods and he can appear and disappear at will and has something to do with UFOs? No, that's stupid. But in the distant past, could there have been some kind of large ape in North America, pre-Ice Age maybe? Sure, why not? Lots, like they say that thousands of species were wiped out. Not just, I'm not even counting the flora, just fauna. Thousands were wiped out during the last Ice Age. So they say, right? All that. So who knows? Who knows? Yeah, he goes by many names. Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Harry, Sam Squanch, sorry, yeah. Yeah, one of the many things that go bump in the night. Well, and that's the thing too, right? I've spent many a night camping out in the woods. And when I go camping, I rough it, right? Just a tent and cook over the fire. I don't have a big fancy trailer or motorhome or anything like that. And when you're sleeping in a tent and it's 2 a.m. and you're out in the woods, the forest can make some weird noises at night and your imagination takes over, and it's like your brain formulates things to try to fill in the blanks of whatever this mysterious thing is, right? Like, I don't know what that thing is, so I'm just gonna my mind is gonna make up something to explain the bumps in the night. Oh, yeah, that's right. The Tasmanian tiger got wiped out, like all kinds. Even fairly recently, like the dodo bird wasn't even that long ago, right? Like there were tales of zoos that had a dodo birds. The Tasmanian tiger was in some zoos up until what, the 30s, I think, the 1930s or the 1920s, maybe a little earlier, but give or take, I want to say somewhere around there. Ed says, I thought I had a few encounters with Sasquatch until they turned around, and I realized it was hairy, unshaven, with long hair mountain men hiding out in the woods making moonshine. Yep, that's right. You get into the hill country now, and they'll be making shine out there, and yeah, if they've been out in the woods for a while, they get long hair and the beard gets a little unkempt and they haven't had a chance to bathe. Yeah, could be mistaken for a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. You get into the Appalachians, right? The Appalachians. And that's the big story, right? You go up into the Appalachians and they're making moonshine up there. Oh, yeah, she tasted you got to have a taste. Got to make sure they're putting out a quality product. I'll take 3 pints of your finest apple brandy, please, good sir. And by apple brandy, in quotations, of course. My granddad used to make hooch, homebrew, and come up with fancy names for it as well. Dandelion wine. It's not wine. It's moonshine. What else did he make? Apple brandy was another one. It wasn't brandy. It was moonshine. He made his own homemade wine and his own homemade beer, like legit stuff. But the other stuff that he called wine and brandy that he made out of dandelions and tree bark and whatever the hell else he had going on out there on the farm, that was moonshine. But that's what people had to do back then to, a lot of people, they had to do what they had to do to make ends meet, right? And during the Great Depression, during Prohibition, people wanted to have a good time. People wanted some kind of, even if it was a temporary reprieve from their daily worries. People like to get a little bit liquored up and shit-faced, and it was tough to do in the U.S. during the Prohibition. So, people are resourceful. couple of neighbors get together, build a still out in the sticks somewhere, and they take turns keeping an eye on the place, and they get a couple of nice batches going and build a good reputation for themselves, a quality product at a good price. Boom, Bob's your uncle. Why not, I say. That's right, white lightning. White lightning going down to my toes. White lightning say, Lord have mercy, goodness knows. Yeah, there, see? Got to be prepared. A fella has got to be prepared. You can brew your own hooch and stockpile it for a, when times get lean, or as a bartering item for when the shit hits the fan. Why not? Why not? Yeah, you could basically make moonshine out of anything that's organic. Basically. Grass clippings. I mean, some of it's going to taste like holy hell, but, tree bark. Like I said, my granddaddy made shine out of tree bark, but like crab apples, wild berries, barley, corn mash. Corn mash is real popular, right? That's how you make Tennessee style whiskey, is corn mash whiskey, right? But yeah, basically you need water, sugar, yeast, some heat, and a little bit of know-how, and you're off to the races. Yeah, they don't call it Mountain Dew for nothing. Mountain Dew. Peach shine. Peach schnapps. Schnapps. Oh yeah, I highly recommend that not only you prepare, but you and have short-term, medium-term, and long-term food storage, and means to procure and purify water and so on and so forth. But you do want some barter items that you could really give two shits about one way or the other, but other people are going to be chomping at the bit and scrambling for. Yeah, and dark chocolate's actually great for anybody. I mean, the ladies love chocolate, but dark chocolate especially is good for everybody. It gives you an energy boost, but without all of the shitty additives that's in milk chocolate. And the higher percentage of cacao or cacao, however you want to pronounce it, that's in there, you get to that 80-85% dark chocolate with the cacao. It gives you a nice natural boost. You don't get the sugar crash. And yeah, it's very highly sought after. Yeah, good barter item. Mega says Jack Daniels runs the wood barrels through a chipper and then put that in the moonshine. Really? I thought when Jack and what was that fella that was his partner? Can't remember the guy's name. He was a black fella. It was an African-American fella, if you will, a person of color. I ain't going to be politically correct around here. He was a black fella. Can't remember his name. But anyways, he's the one that came up with the whole thing, and he worked with Jack Daniels or whatever. And I thought I remember hearing something about that they were getting old wooden barrels that port or red wine was stored or fermented in, and they were fermenting their whiskey in those barrels, and that's what gave it the unique flavor. But I might be mixing that up, because I know the company that makes Tabasco sauce, that McElhaney's and Company or whatever, they age their hot pepper sauce, their Tabasco sauce, in old whiskey barrels, which gives it that distinctive flavor. Because I like Tabasco. It's hot and spicy, but it's not just hot for the sake of hot. It actually has a nice, rich flavor to it. So, yeah. But I don't know. I mean, again, this is all just stuff that we're told. Oh, this guy, Jack Daniels, came up with this corn mash Tennessee whiskey, and it's now the most famous in the world. Oh, okay. Sure. Whatever you say. I don't know. Oh, Maggot, you are set. He says, got 1 acre, olive trees, grapes, citrus trees, and then water tanks. Yeah, citrus is good to get your vitamin C. Although if you live in an area that has what we call evergreen trees, more specifically needle trees, pine trees, and spruce trees, the new tips, the new shoots at the end of each branch or bough, where you have the light green little needles, you pick those and you boil that, and it's called bush tea. And you drink that, and it, from what I understand, it has 10 times the amount of vitamin C that orange juice has, for example, or just like, not the store-bought stuff either. Like, go out and pick an orange, cut it in half, and like squeeze your own orange juice. It supposedly has 10 times the amount of vitamin C than oranges do. So if you don't have a citrus tree, then, but you live in an area, like if citrus trees don't grow up here, right? We can't grow oranges, lemons, limes, none of that up here in Alberta. It doesn't get hot enough, and the growing season's too short, and the soil isn't right, and yada, yada, yada. But we can't grow those here, but pine trees grow like crazy up here, so we can get our vitamin C in a crap hits the fan scenario. You know, you're not going to be going to the Piggly Wiggly to get a bag of oranges or vitamin C pills, but, you know, I can at least brew up some bush tea with pine needles. Yeah, so if you live in an area with lots of pine trees, then you're okay for vitamin C. Now, don't get me wrong, bush tea isn't the best tasting stuff. You might want to throw other stuff in there to give it a nicer aftertaste, some wild mint and maybe some wild berries if they're in season or something, just to give it a little bit of a nicer flavor to it. Because otherwise it's going to taste like you're drinking hot pine sol. What are you doing, washing Granny's floor or drinking tea? A bit of both is what I'm doing over here. Oh, I didn't know that. Maggot says kale is high in vitamin C and will grow in the snow. Really? Huh. I'm not real partial to the flavor of kale, though. I find it really bitter. And also, I just have a bone of contention with kale because all the hipsters and the vegetarian hipsters are just like, that's the big thing is kale, and they're always throwing that in your face. You should try kale. You should try eating kale. Don't you like kale? Have some kale. You know, take your kale and cram it. Kale tea, kale chips, like, you know, like potato chips or what they call crisps, right? Over in England there, they call potato chips crisps. Well, they have kale chips. Oh, you should try them. They're better than potato chips. No, they're not. They're not better than potato chips. Otherwise, they would have invented kale chips before potato chips. They're not better at all. I don't care how much barbecue sauce flavor and salt and vinegar or whatever the hell you throw on it. It's still kale. But hey, if you like kale, more power to you and more for you. And if you can grow your own kale, or if you can grow your own food in general, then again, more power to you. Why not? I say go for it. On my grandparents' little farm there in the South Shore outside of Montreal, they didn't have a huge place, right? They just had 5 acres. But my granddaddy had a little plum orchard and apple orchard, and he grew grapes for his legit wine. But they had a huge vegetable garden. My grandparents had a massive vegetable garden, and my granddaddy kept bees also. And they had a few goats and chickens and geese. Shit, I remember being 7 years old and my grandmother handing me a hatchet and saying, "Go out into the chicken coop and get Grandma 3 good chickens for dinner, will you?" That meant she wanted me to grab 3 nice, big, fat, plump, mature chickens, take them over to the chopping block, cut their heads off, and then bring them into the house for her to pluck and prepare for dinner. 7 years old. It's the way life is on the farm. Now, I didn't grow up on that farm, but I spent pretty much every weekend there from the time I was born until I was 10 years old and we moved out here. So I knew my way around on the farm, and even as a kid, I could understand the difference between growing your own food and buying it at the supermarket, and I could taste the difference. Many of us, of course, can taste the difference, you know, If you have your own vegetable garden and I don't know, let's say you grow green beans. Well, they're way more delicious and nutritious than the green beans that you'll buy at the supermarket, even if they're organic, locally sourced, farm to plate, blah, 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 blah. It's still not as good as the stuff you grow yourself in your own backyard or whatever, Oh, Maggot, you're killing me. He says, I had a cafe a few years back and we sold kale salads, kale drinks. You're killing me with the kale, Maggot. But hey, why not, man? If people want it, if it's in high enough demand, and if you own a business that's in providing people with a service or a product that's in high demand, you might as well. Might as well. So once again, I want to welcome you to New West Reset. My name is Frankie. Hello. Thanks for shooting in and joining me here for this live stream. This was my 9th, I think. Yeah, it was New West Reset live number 9. It's only rock and roll, but it's Alberta. We were talking about the town of Frank, Alberta, a couple-hour drive south by southwest of where I am. Major rock slide, like a quarter of Turtle Mountain, just fell in the middle of the night. 90 million tons, they say, and buried half this town in 1903 at 4 in the morning, killing between 70 and 90 people in this town of maybe 2,000 people. I don't know. They didn't give us the date or the population of the date of the landslide, which I find weird. They give you all the details about, oh, so-and-so had to crawl out of the house and so-and-so was buried, but Mr. Smith and Mr. Jennings took him out, got him out of there. And it was exactly at 4:10 a.m. and it took 100 seconds. And it was such and such amount of square footage or cubic footage of rock and such tons, but they don't give you the population of the town. So all we can do is speculate, because in 1901, there was like 17 people in the town. And in 1906, there was just shy of 1,200 people in the town. So 1903, at the height of the mining of this area, the coal mining, I don't know, be generous and say 2,000 people maybe. But there's so many things that are hinky and hokey about the narrative, as per usual with these things, right? And this little town of Frank is no exception. I mean, they say the town was located over this part and the landslide buried it, but then when you look at the satellite photo, the interpretive center and parts of the town are on the other side of the train tracks, but they say they built it on the east side, but then other places say that it was built between the tracks and the mountain. In the photos, we see the town at the base of the mountain, which would be west of the train tracks, not east of the train tracks. So I don't know. We saw a couple of huge boulders that were the sizes of cars or houses, and we saw some that were cut in right angles. So if it's just a mountain that collapsed, then why is there what look like giant stones cut in rectangular shapes with right angles and corners on them? Could that have been a boulder from the mine shaft? Maybe, but they tend not to like carve perfectly angled 90-degree angles in a mine shaft. They just kind of crudely mine in because they're following the vein of iron ore, gold or silver or coal or whatever they're doing, right? So I don't know. It's very hokey, very strange. I still find it strange that there's still people living in the town of Frank after this rock slide, after this mountain crumbled and buried the town under 30 feet of rubble, by the way, in some cases. People were so scared after the fact that you saw the interview with those two brothers that their grandfather, I think they said, had survived the landslide. And they said you had to drag it out of them, these people talking about it. Well, of course, it was traumatic, but not so traumatic that the people wouldn't up and move. There's still people living in the area. They're still nervous about this thing. They still talk about it all the time. It could happen again at any moment. They're monitoring the thing with scientific equipment to see if it's going to come down again. It's ridiculous. Get the hell out of there. 200 people in this town, but it's got a Freemasons lodge in a town of 200-300 people. And then we took a nice little walkabout tour via the Google Maps of the neighboring town of Blairmore with all of these crazy old world buildings that have no business being in a small little town of, again, just a couple of hundred people, just some little mining town out in the mountains, 2-3 hour drive from any major center of any significance, really. It's just, as per usual, it just, yeah. As Old World Michigan says, as per usual, for sure. Things just don't add up. It seems weird. Seems really weird. Cal Garrison is here. Again, another new name to me. Anyways, welcome. He says there's a whole town under Lake Minnewanka. I think there are a lot of towns under a lot of what they're calling man-made lakes, which are really reservoirs, right? Like they dam up some river and it floods a whole valley. Oops, it just so happens that there were like 6 little towns in that huge valley. Whoops, sorry. I mean, that was the whole plot of the movie Deliverance, right? With Burt Reynolds and Ned Beatty and the other guy, I can't remember his name, a couple other guys. Right, but they wanted to go canoeing down this river one last time through these little towns in I think it was, again, in the Appalachians or something, but because they were going to be putting a dam there and it was going to flood the whole valley. So it was their last chance to go to their favorite, whatever it was, fishing spot or hunting spot or whatever the hell they were going on their canoe trip, right? But that was the thing. A couple of streams ago, I was talking about I'm looking for star forts in Alberta. I haven't found any star forts in Alberta at all. There are star forts in Canada. It seems they're mostly out east, Ontario, Quebec, in the Maritimes, and in Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island. There's a couple in Manitoba. But that's 2 provinces to the east of me. I don't know if there's any in Saskatchewan. I haven't really looked because I don't really focus much on Saskatchewan. But then where I am in Alberta, I've looked everywhere. I've even looked physically, boots on the ground here in Calgary for areas that I suspect might have had a star fort, like at Fort Calgary. But I don't even see any ghosting of any. Like when you look from above on Google Maps, sometimes you can see the outline or what I call the ghosting of like some of the walls or the angles and all this from the star forts. I'm not seeing anything. But speaking of reservoirs and damming up rivers and flooding valleys, I'm starting to think that if there was a star fort in Calgary, it would be beside a river, which Fort Calgary is beside the river. It's in fact at the junction of 2 rivers where the Elbow feeds into the Bow River. And Fort Calgary's right there in that pie shape. So I figured if there was going to be a star fort anywhere, it would be there. It's called Fort Calgary, and it's at the confluence of 2 rivers. Boop, like this. I figured it would be right there. But I don't see anything. So now I'm starting to think it's in the Glenmore Reservoir, which was built, I think, in the early 60s here in Calgary. And they flooded a huge area. The Glenmore Reservoir is a massive body of water now, just right here in the city limits. I mean, I can take my bike and go for maybe a half-hour bike ride on the bike paths, and boom, there a feller is right there at the Glenmore Reservoir. So I'm starting to think if there was a star fort, it would have been along the Bow River in that area. And when they put the reservoir there and dammed it up and flooded it, they flooded the star fort. And who knows what else is flooded in around there too. And again, that's just conjecture. That's just me speculating and thinking out loud because I don't know for sure. But from what I've seen of Calgary, the older parts of the city and the old world architecture, the Tartarian-inspired architecture, like buildings built in the 1870s with huge columns and massive arched doorways and all this. And I'm like, what the hell is that doing in some town that's supposed to be cowboys and Indians? So when I look at all that, I think, Calgary's had to have been an old world city, and the narrative is way off on it. They've added years to the timeline of Calgary. I think some of these buildings are way older than they say they are. And if Calgary was indeed an old world city and was here longer than they said, there had to have been a star fort here because of the rivers. And I just wasn't seeing it. So that's the only conclusion I can come to. But who knows, right? Megan says, and I just got offered 3 days a week on a winery. Really? Huh. Not too bad. Not too bad. Great Lakes. Oh, man, there's probably all kinds of stuff under the Great Lakes. I mean, who knows what's under there? Any man-made lake where they dam up something to make a reservoir. I mean, it's got to be a reason why. Why at that point did they decide to dam up the river and flood a valley, right? Like, why there, right? One could say, well, if there was nobody populating that valley, then okay, that would be a good place to dam up the river because then you could flood that whole valley and you're not displacing anybody. Okay, fine. But we know for a fact, because we've been told by their own narratives, that oftentimes when they do dam up a river to make a reservoir or a man-made lake or something, that they do flood towns. They have to evacuate all the people. Sorry, bye. Hope you enjoyed your 30 or 40 or 50 years that you lived in this town, but now you got to go, lols. Bye. Right? So I'm sure there's lots of stuff under the surface of water, right? In these reservoirs, man-made lakes, that sort of thing. Old World Michigan asking your thoughts on star forts, please. I don't know. I honestly don't know. And I've said before, I'll say it again. I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. Anybody that says that they know with 100% certainty about stuff in the distant past, no, you don't. You don't know. You know what you've read, you know what you've researched or maps that you've looked at, but you don't know. None of us know because we haven't been there. So I don't know. I do find it odd that if these star forts are made for some kind of defensive purposes, why they're always along a body of water. And some would say, well, it's, you've got your garrisons or your military stationed at these forts. They got to have water. Sure, I guess, but one could easily drill for water, find underground water, and put a well there and build a fort around that. So, I mean, I don't know. Some say that there were power plants of some kind. I don't know, possibly, could be. I'm not, see, the whole thing about ether and old world antiquitech and free energy, like I don't know, like I don't think it was electricity and free energy like what we use today, where we plug stuff into a wall to make stuff light up or beep or click or work. I think the energy that they used was used in a different way, and I think water had a lot to do with not only the energy but how the old world machines were operated. I think a lot of it was done with water pressure and pistons and like what they call Roman screws and that type of stuff. So I think perhaps, and again, I don't know, this is just speculation, this is just a guy just spitballing, but I think maybe star forts could have been like pumping stations or something that had to do with pressurizing the water to push it into the fort. Let's say if it was a star city, right, to push it within the walls to provide water and water pressure for the citizens within the star city, but also to power all the machines and mechanisms within the city in conjunction with perhaps the ether in some way. But if it was just a star fort and not a huge star city, then I think maybe that fort was used to build up the pressure to pump the water because they've been using pressure to pump water for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. I mean, the royal palace and the gardens in Versailles in France, there from old King whatever his name is, some fruity king in France back in the day. I think it was in what, the 15 or 1600s. Anyways, Versailles basically started off as just this king's hunting lodge or his father's hunting lodge, but he wanted to make it his palace. So he got all these architects and landscapers to build him this big fancy schmancy Peter Pantsy type of palace with these huge gardens, and he had all these big fountains. And they had to divert water from a couple of different rivers to have water for all of these water features, these fountains in his garden. And they had to build up the pressure. So what they did was they used like pipes going downhill to build up the pressure, and ever decreasing circumference of pipes to build up the pressure to the point where it could shoot water out of these fountains, 50, 60 feet in the air kind of thing. So perhaps these star forts had something to do with the mechanisms and the water pressure. And again, a lot of steam was used. A lot of the old world tech was steam. So again, water power, steam power. So I think perhaps that. Now, were some of these star forts built as forts? Yeah, I think so. I think some of them were actually built as military fortifications in strategic areas, but not the really fancy, really intricate star forts that we see that really emulate the what we see with sound frequencies, right? So certain sound frequencies produce certain shapes, and a lot of these really beautifully intricate star forts with all of what we call these like star bursts coming out of them and all of these things, where it's more than just a 5 or 6 sided star fort with some pointy corners. It's much more elaborate. I don't think those were fortifications at all. They're way too fancy. They're way too huge. Some of them have entire cities in them. I mean, you look at places like in Amsterdam, like all these Dutch star forts, and there's, to this day, there's cities and towns in these giant star forts. Like if you're going to build walls around your city to fortify your city and protect your citizens because you have some fiefdom or kingdom and you want to protect the citizens, sure. But are you going to build some big fancy wall with all of this intricate details and all of these complicated angles? Or are you just going to build a 4-sided fort? Right? And they say, oh, it deflects cannon fire and stuff. And in some cases, sure. Again, yeah. But these really intricate, fancy forts, whether they're really big or just kind of smaller, I think they're way too intricate and way too fancy just to be bastions or fortifications. Some perhaps built later as forts, okay. But I think the old world ones that we see, the really extravagant ones or the really, really old ones that have looks like they've been decommissioned and have been, now they're sort of crumbling and weathering and falling apart. I think those maybe had something to do with water power, steam power, yada yada. But again, I don't know. I don't think that there were like alien landing pads for, ET phone home and all that. That's BS. I don't think it was anything like that at all. But I mean, we see these all over the world. So they say, well, the Spanish and the Italians built them. Well, okay, as part of their military when they were, especially the Spanish, when they were out conquering everything all over the place. Well, okay, but I mean, there's places that were never colonized by Spain or any of the big imperial civilizations, right? Whether it was the British Empire, the Spanish, the Romans, whatever. I mean, there were just some places in the world that were never under their rule, that they never conquered, that they never occupied, but these places have star forts. So it's like, well, you're telling me that the Romans built them or the British built them or the American Army Corps of Engineers built them. Maybe they built some of them, but, they didn't build them in the middle of buttfuck nowhere, China, The Spanish didn't conquer China. Great Britain didn't conquer China. They tried, but they didn't. So there's some parts of the world that where there's star forts that those parts were never colonized or imperialized by any other civilization that supposedly were going around building these forts for military application. So I don't know. Now, if you say, the Spanish built the star forts in Mexico, okay, some of those I could see because the Spanish were in Mexico forever. So sure, I get it. Even if you want to say the Spanish built some of the star forts that you find in Florida and New Mexico and California, maybe. Okay, even that I could buy some of them. But again, not the big fancy ones and not the super ancient ones. So I don't know. It's one of those things in this community, right? It's a question wrapped in a riddle, dipped in an enigma. So, there's just things that there's just so many rabbit holes that one can go down, even just with stuff that is touched upon in this community, right? The mud flood community. I mean, you can get in all kinds of stuff. Like star forts is just one thing, viaducts, aqueducts, pressed brick versus kiln-fired brick. There's just so many avenues that you can go down, right? Melted buildings, mud-flooded buildings. It's too much. It's too much. That's why I just focus on boots on the ground, stuff that I can go and observe that's right here in my city. I can go to areas that I know are older parts of the city, go and physically see these buildings, bust out the camera, take some video footage, walk around the place, stick my nose in somebody else's business and really check out the places. And that's really all I can focus on because there's too much out there. I could easily get distracted by this, that, or the other. I already get distracted by old steam locomotive trains. So a guy can't get too far out in the weeds with some of this stuff. There's channels out there that cover this way better than I could do any day of the week. So I kind of leave the expertise. If somebody's got a lot more expertise and experience with star forts, they do that, and I'll go watch that guy. If somebody really knows what they're talking about with old Roman aqueducts and canal systems where the water was brought across hundreds, if not thousands of miles over land and mountains, that to me, that's amazing. And I don't know how they did it, and I question how they did it. So I'll watch that guy's channel because he does it better than I could, right? So, but I know there's star forts everywhere. They're everywhere. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Yeah, they're in the Azores. Yeah, there's there's quite a few star forts in Canada. I think I know officially there's around 20, give or take, but I think there's way more than that. There's probably 100 or more. I think some of them have been covered up by golf courses. Some of them have been destroyed. Some of them have been dismantled. Some of them have been. Oh, that's a mining facility, right? But it used to be an old star fort or something. So I mean, who knows? But with that being said, even with me, saying that I'm trying to find a star fort in Alberta, again, I don't let that be too much of a distraction. I don't focus on that too much. I've gone physically to areas that I thought there might be a star fort here in the city and looked and didn't see it. I've looked on Google Earth with the Google Map thing and didn't see any evidence. So the only thing I could think of is maybe under the water in the Glenmore Reservoir. And I got to kind of move on. I got to keep doing what I'm doing with. There's so many old world structures here in Calgary that just don't fit the narrative that a guy could upload a video once a week, which is what I do. And I can go on forever, whether it's some old house, some big giant official government building, some old school, crazy obelisks and weirdo statues, weirdo public parks with all kinds of sacred geometry built into the landscaping. I mean, that's enough to keep a guy going for ages here without getting into the weeds, Well, that's kind of the thing, right? Is Old World Michigan sings so much Old World in Canada, and that's the thing, right? Is the narrative we're given is Canada's really young compared to Europe or Canada. 1867 is when we officially became a country. Here in Alberta, we didn't even become a province until like 1905 or whatever the hell it was. So, or was it 1910? I can't even remember. So many numbers and information bounce around in a guy's mason jar here, but that's the thing is there's, Canada's so young. Well, okay, why is there 200-year-old buildings in parts of the country and out east, especially in Quebec and stuff? Wow, man, like Quebec City and Montreal, Nova Scotia, some of those big cities really out in the east. I mean, there's parts of the old Montreal that are like 500 years old, parts of Quebec City 400 or 500 years old. I mean, it's crazy. And they, they built these big, massive 6-story red brick and limestone buildings that take up an entire city block. And they built it in, the 1650 in Quebec when there was only like, I don't know, 8,000 people there. And they were all like working for the Hudson's Bay Company as fur trappers. Like, it's crazy. So, yeah, the narrative doesn't fit, right? And as a Canadian, I hear of these American cities, right? Like St. Louis and Detroit and Chicago and New York City. Oh, they're supposed to be these ancient old cities because the United States is so old. Fucking New York was founded in like the 1800s. Same as Calgary, same as Montreal, same as Edmonton, same as Vancouver. Okay, before that it was called New Amsterdam, but it's not. It's crazy because I always thought, well, like Detroit had to have been there since the 1600s because Columbus in 1492 and all that crap. But no, Detroit's only been around for a couple hundred years, same as Calgary. And again, that's by their narrative. So unless, like, wait a second, this is goofy. Like, Canada's supposed to be young, the United States a little bit older, but basically North America is supposed to be the new world, so much newer than the old world, Europe and so on. But the architecture basically looks the same. Yeah, perhaps it's scaled down a little bit because the population was a little less in the new world, so we're told. So okay, that I can buy into that. But I mean, copper domes and huge arches and huge columns and huge pillars and huge balustrades and colonnades and all this stuff in like places like Calgary, where it's supposed to be cowboys and Indians and cattle ranchers back in the 1800s. Like, what the hell's going on? And that's why I started this channel, because I wanted to show people, yes, it's in Paris and London and Chicago and San Francisco. But guess what? It's also in these little towns in the middle of nowhere, and it's also in Canadian cities that we're told, oh, Calgary's only since 1886. Well, that's when it became a town, but some of these buildings I think were here before that because they're way too old. Hello, today I was shooting video footage so I could edit it and put it up for my weekly upload on Sundays. And I found some house that's just right. It's like 3 blocks from where I work. It's just there. Mud flood windows. What looks like a concrete foundation, but it's starting to crumble away on one corner, and I found red brick underneath it. Not stone, red brick foundation? No. So that my assumption is that building goes down and the basement was the main floor. And that's why those windows there's one that's right at ground level and the other one's about 4 inches underground. And the one that's 4 inches underground still has window panes, like glass in the window. So I'm like, you're kidding me, right? This is somebody's playing a prank on me, right? Ashton Kutcher's going to jump out from behind a tree and tell me I've been punked for the last 42 years here in Calgary or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's nuts. Old World Michigan says, I hope you keep doing it. Oh yeah, I intend to keep doing it until I run out of places to see here in Calgary, and then I guess it'll be road trips to Edmonton. And I've already done a video, actually. My dad and I were going on a fishing trip, and we stopped in this little town to get gas. And I said, Dad, look at that old building. Look at that other old building. Dad, look at that old building. So we did kind of a quick drive-by down the main street and down a couple of side streets, because my dad had been there before, and he's like, I'll show you some old world buildings here, son. He showed me some old red brick buildings, and even my dad said, I don't know how they built these. The railroad didn't come in here until 1906 or whatever. These buildings were built in the 1880s out of red brick. That meant they would have had to come by horse and cart from Medicine Hat to this town called Didsbury. That would have taken 2 weeks on horse and cart. And how many loads of brick would have to be brought all of that way? Load after load after load to build a 3-story brick hotel in this little farming town that has like 1,200 people in it. So yeah, I guess once I run out of material to do here in Calgary, I'll be, I don't know, I don't drive, so I'll have to rent a car or borrow a buddy's car and head out to some of these little towns and show you that it's the same everywhere. Just like Caleb's showing at Streets of Tartaria and these little towns in Utah of 200-300 people. Same thing here in Alberta. Little farming towns, 200 or 300 people, have these massive old world buildings. Almost always, I'll say 99% of the time, they have a Freemasons lodge. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So yeah, I'm definitely not planning on stopping anytime soon. That's for sure. So with that said, I think just after 10 p.m. here local time, a guy does have to work tomorrow, unfortunately. I have a wacky schedule. I don't have the same set schedule every week. So, some weeks I might have Tuesday, Thursday off. The next week I might have Monday, Saturday off. So that's why it's taken a little bit of planning and goofing around trying to arrange this meetup here in the next couple of weeks. But we'll get her done. So yeah, with that said, I'm going to have myself a late snack, cup of tea, read a couple of chapters of a book that I've been balls deep in here for a little while, and then guys got to hit the rack so that he can clock in for the man tomorrow. The boot. No horse and cart. Well, that's the thing, right? Because I think the railroad was already there. They just uncovered the railroad later on after the mud flood. So I think those bricks got to that little town that Dad and I drove through by railroad from where they were made. But then just after the mud flood, people didn't know that there was this thing called steam locomotive engines that hauled boxcars that you could move people and goods to and fro with, until they uncovered the rails and found the old trains and the old train barns and the old roundhouses. And some people were intelligent enough and creative minded enough to be able to reverse engineer some of the stuff to figure out how it worked. That's maybe how those bricks got there. Because yeah, otherwise it's horse and cart. And I mean, in the 1880s in Alberta, rural Alberta, horse and cart. And again, going by their narrative, right? They're going to be ducking and dodging and avoiding bands of wild Indians trying to scalp them, right? That's what we're told, is that there was the wild Indian tribes here that were attacking settlers and the pioneers and people migrating westward and people establishing their farms and ranches, and they have to be on the lookout for the wild Indians. So not only do you have to travel all that distance, horse and cart, hauling red brick to build some hotel 3,000 kilometers away from where you're getting the brick from, but you gotta avoid all the wild Indians that are trying to kill you and scalp you, or whatever the bullshit narrative they give you. So it's a guy could go on. In fact, next month for my mid-month live stream, I will be looking at the residential schools for the Indigenous peoples here from the 1840s up until the 50s, actually, just over 100 years that system, conjunction between the church and the government of Canada, they would basically pluck children out of their indigenous communities, tear them away from their families. Oftentimes, if it was brothers and sisters, they'd separate them, and they'd send them off, in some cases, hundreds of miles away to these rural residential schools, again, out in the middle of nowhere, to educate and civilize the wild, savage Indians, right? Basically convert them to Christianity or their version of Christianity, and basically destroy their language and culture. And we'll get into that. That'll be next month. I'm going to look at that. A little bit of a heavy topic, but it's definitely something that's important and well worth looking into. And you should see some of the photos I found of these so-called residential schools in the middle of nowhere. Massive, massive old world structures. Just incredible. So until then, I want to thank you very much for once again shooting in and joining me here out in the Wild West in Calgary for this live stream, New West Reset live episode 9 here. It's only rock and roll, but it's Alberta. Once again, my name is Frankie, and I really appreciate everybody taking time out of their Friday night or maybe their Saturday morning or afternoon to tune in and join little old me for some of this Alberta shenanigans. I appreciate it as always. Thanks again to Stuffed Beagle and Pearson for helping to keep an eye on things. And thanks to all my friends, old and new, for joining me here tonight. Great conversations, great questions, great comments in the chat. So that's what it's all about. That's why I do this. That's why I love these streams. Real-time feedback, real-time conversations, and sharing ideas, bouncing ideas off of each other. That's good stuff. That's what we need to keep doing. So excellent. Thank you very, very much. Really, really appreciate it. So as I say, I think that is going to seal the deal here for this one here at New West Reset with It's Only Rock and Roll, but it's Alberta. New West Reset Live, number 9 on this Friday, September the 16th. Once again, thank you very much for joining me here. If you haven't already, give me one of these thumbs ups. I'll do all the stuff, the YouTube stuffs. It helps. It helps a little guy like me, and I don't ask often. More importantly, if you're watching this after the fact, as opposed to live, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. So just, down in the comments down below the video there, just kind of beep, boop, bop it there for me if you could. It'd be great. So yeah, that is going to do it here today. So again, thank you. And until the next one, have a good one. Cheers.